Good evening, class. Any doubt from the previous chapter? External sector? One doubt I am received on mail. That is your foreign exchange reserves and the valuation effect. Foreign exchange reserves, we discussed one part of it is held in foreign currency assets, which is held in securities. Now, if the yield on the securities is increasing, how are we saying that foreign exchange reserves are being reduced? If the yield is increasing, that means the person who's holding should be getting more. Why are we saying that the value of reserves is being reduced? Bond prices decreasing. So if the bond price is decreasing but the yield is increasing, this is what whoever is holding the security. In this case, who is holding the security? Foreign exchange reserves are held by the RBI. So now RBI is holding a security. The yield on the security is increasing. That means if the RBI is going in the market to sell, it will have to offer the higher yield. The interest rates in the market have increased. That is, in the US market have increased. That is why the yield are also facing the same pressure. For when they sell this bond in the market, the yield will have to increase. This is when they are going to sell. They are holding on the security. Now when they are holding on the security, that means a asset whose bond price is falling. That means the asset, this security ka price is less. So in the RBI books, something which was of say $100 is now worth $70. I had written in my books that this is the worth of the security which I was holding. Now the worth of the security is 70 because the yield has increased, the bond price has fallen. This $30 is what the RBI will have to book a loss. This is the valuation effect, that the asset I am holding, its value is decreasing. This is why. Demand, very basic. Interest rates बढ़ रहे हैं. You have two options, whether to invest in a bond or when will you invest in the bond? When the yield will be equal to this interest rate. When will that happen? When will your yield be equal to, or when your yield will be equivalent to interest rate? How will the yield of the bond change? Can you change the interest rate? The interest rate cannot be changed, तो yield कैसे change होगा? उसका डिमांड ही इसलिए बना है क्योंकि उसका बॉन्ड प्राइस फॉल हुआ है. It is not the opposite, that if people are demanding more, bond price should be more. Its demand is created because the prices of bond have fallen. Otherwise, there is no demand for this bond. वो डिमांड बनाने के लिए ही the bond price have fallen, which have led to increase in yield. It is not the opposite. I had two options to invest my money in. One was increase in the interest rates or the bond. I will do this only when you give me a lower price on the bond. So the demand has been created by falling bond price. Now this falling bond price means the asset which the RBI is holding, its value is falling. This is its valuation loss. This is what we say. One is a book value. I have written whatever the value of the asset is. The other is the market value. This loss is my valuation loss, जो मेरे को आज नहीं कल करना पड़ेगा. इसीलिए the reserves are falling because of the loss in this. Same thing has happened with the banks also. The banks in India have also faced the same problem, that they are holding on a lot of assets whose value is falling because yield is increasing. Right now in India also the interest rates are increasing, which has forced the yield to go up. That means the assets which the banks are holding are down. The value of the asset is less. This is their difference between book value and market value, which they will have to book as a loss. In fact, this is the whole story of your failure of this Silicon Valley Bank. उनके काफी सारे assets का the value loss happened like this. To cover for this loss itself, RBI has asked the banks to maintain a investment revaluation fund for things like this only. This will act as a buffer for these type of losses. This is the valuation loss. So understand कि if the yield has increased, तो bond price बढ़ना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं है. वो bond yield इसीलिए increase हुई है क्योंकि bond price गिरा है. Otherwise you can't yield. This is a common mistake which people think. If the yield is more, तो demand ज़्यादा होनी चाहिए इस bond की, तो price अपने आप गिरेगा. Yield बढ़ी ही इसलिए है क्योंकि prices fall हुए हैं bond के. Otherwise you would not have got this yield, because you cannot change. Bond is an instrument which gives you a fixed return at maturity. Bond mature होगा उसी price पे, for example 100 rupees, 8%, you are going to get 108 at maturity. You can't change the interest rate because the issuer is what has issued this bond. Is this clear? How the valuation effect is working here? Hedge and buffer is the same thing. Buffer B is, see, you have buffer is a capital which you keep aside for certain losses. Same thing is you are doing hedging. You are expecting the movements to go up and down. This is why you have kept a hedge. Hedge भी protection है, buffer भी protection है. It's just English words, their meaning is the same. The same thing which we discussed, the RBI, why it should not be holding foreign exchange reserves, because foreign exchange reserves not only have an opportunity cost, but they also give diminishing returns. Diminishing returns we discussed because if the yield goes up, उनकी interest ज़्यादा नहीं है, yield goes up, the bond prices fall. This is why, this is the cost of holding foreign exchange reserves. This is why we discussed how much is enough, discussed through two formulas. In fact, there are more also. The RBI said we should have more for covering different indicators, not just one indicator. These were the two costs of holding foreign exchange reserve, the opportunity cost and diminishing returns. Opportunity cost, the difference between domestic interest rate and foreign interest rate. Domestic interest rates, why? So RBI is practically using the rupee to buy dollar. This is what they are doing to accumulate foreign exchange reserves. This rupee could have been paid or could have been used to pay the So the interest here in the domestic market and the earning it is getting here. Earning is the interest rates which are abroad. So difference between the two is the opportunity cost of holding foreign exchange reserves. Is this clear? Debt service ratio. Lower value because you have principal interest. You should have whatever current receipts, yes. If your current receipts are more, that means you are able to cover for your debt. This is your debt service ratio. Principal interest should be covered by this. If this is more, this is better. Low, when it is low, it is better, not more. When this value is low, it is stable for the country. Interest coverage ratio का उल्टा है. A low value will be better. Now next two chapters are your industry and services. See, most of the chapter observations regarding how industries and services have performed in the last 1 year. This sector wise performance is going to help you write answer in mains. What exactly is the growth scenario of industry and also services? The terms here, what is the sector preference, what exactly are the schemes and certain institutions are important for prelims. The facts here are not that important because whatever we have seen, the facts and the trends, all of this are asked majorly on macroeconomic variables. What is important for industry and services is your, what is the different government policy, what are schemes and certain institutions. इसका ट्रेंड परफॉर्मेंस कम है इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर प्रीलिम्स. मोस्टली व्हेन यू अंडरस्टैंड द सेक्टोरल द परफॉर्मेंस इन इंडस्ट्री एंड सर्विसेज यू विल बी बेटर एबल टू राइट आंसर इन मेंस के कौन से सेक्टर इंडिया में वेल परफॉर्मिंग है, व्हाट इज द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ इंडस्ट्री, विच सेक्टर्स वी शुड फोकस मोर एंड व्हाट इज द गवर्नमेंट डूइंग इन ऑल दीज सेक्टर्स. This is most important because in most of your conclusion you need to know what exactly the government is already doing. Way forward or government schemes is how you end your answers. So this chapter, both industry and services, is going to help. What is the free money that startups are getting from foreign countries? See, free money वो ये था that if interest rates are very low in the outside country, interest rates are practically zero. That means most of the foreign venture capitalist firms are getting free money, which they were investing in startups in India. In fact, this is something which the industry chapter has also mentioned कि अब ये funding मिलनी बहुत मुश्किल हो गई है startups को. Now they are forced to find a business idea जो उन्हें पहले करना था, but अब कुछ business करके दिखाना पड़ेगा startups को. This is why it is getting very difficult for them. Now first, what is the significance of industry? Why is industry important for any economy? Why the growth cannot come from services? In fact, India has made this direct transition from agriculture to services. Now why is this not a very sustainable model of growth? What exactly is the benefit? Job though you can create in agriculture and jobs can also be created in services. Right now India has this model only. We have very less job creation in industry, and even when we have job creation in industry, the quality of jobs is not good. Most of the job creation is informal. What exactly is multiplier? What exactly is the benefit or significance of industry? In fact, the economic survey starts with explaining the significance of industry. Why do we need to focus on industrial growth and development? Why can't you import the final goods? बाहर से मंगा लो, खुद क्यों बनाने? This is what one of the things they talk about, all of your domestic demand for goods. This is going to be fulfilled through domestic industry. And why we should not be focusing, or why should we not import a lot of goods from outside? Because this is going to create a trade imbalance and problem on the balance of payment front. What could be the problem on balance of payment front if you are going to import everything? Depreciation तो it is through market forces, उसका तो impact अपने आप आएगा. इसका सबसे बड़ा problem क्या है? Trade imbalance और problem on balance of payments. Is where are you going to earn the dollars to pay for it. This is the biggest problem, that if you are going to depend on the goods from outside, if you're not going to diversify and you're going to depend on outside, from where are you going to find the dollars? This is why, if you see in the last 6 months to 1 year, the Prime Minister has again and again repeated that we are addicted to imports. We need to reduce the import quantity because we can have a pressure on dollar. The more you need dollar, the more you will be affected by any volatility of outside. This is a very threatening thing. Any outside event, you can have repercussions in India because आपकी dependence dollar पे बहुत ज़्यादा है. Then if you need more dollar, then movements of dollar is going to control or is going to have an impact on in your economy. अगर आपको डॉलर चाहिए ही नहीं तो वो volatility होगी नहीं. So this is why you should not have a import dependence. You need the domestic demand should be fulfilled by the domestic production activity. What else is the benefit of industry? There is one thing which is called as the multiplier effect or the spillover effect. Now, what exactly is the multiplier or the spillover effect which we have of industry? Industry has one of the most significant multiplier or the spillover effects. Infrastructure is also the same. Industry also has a significant multiplier or a spillover effect. What is that? It can contain large number of demands, okay, but what exactly would you mean by multiplier? So industry is providing jobs, तो वो spillover क्या हुआ? How? If there is, say, a industry producing mobile phones, what exactly is the spillover it is having? What effect? Conglomeration effect क्या है? See, the basic idea what spillover effect says, if there is one job that is created here, now this is going to create spillover effects that only one job is not being created. Since any industry has a backward linkage, what is the backward linkage? The raw materials. This one job is not just a job here, you are going to create several more jobs in the backward linkage. And what is the forward linkage? Market. So what is the forward linkage here? So if there is one job created due to the raw material, so multiplier effect, सिर्फ एक ही job create नहीं हो रही एक mobile phone से, you have 3-4 jobs in the backward linkage also. What is the forward linkage? Service sector. तो वो तो एक industry create करेगा. Spillover forward में क्या है? Selling of phones. Selling of phones, how exactly? वो तो industry manufacture करेगा. This one job that has been created, this is the money which he is earning. This money is being used to buy other goods and services, which will create a demand for these goods and services. This is the demand which has to be supplied for. And this supply is going to further create jobs. So this is what explains the multiplier, and this multiplier or the spillover effect is maximum in industry, where the production would require the backward linkages, where you will have creation of more jobs, whoever is going to create the supply. And in the forward linkage, the person whose job has been created or any number of jobs created here are going to spend this money on goods and services in the market. The spending of money of goods and services in the market is going to create, this is your demand which is being supplied for, and this is why you'll have jobs. This is what also explains your K-shaped recovery, that if your people don't have a lot of income, unka forward linkage weak hai. If their forward linkage is weak, you will not have this demand and supply. Consider industry, they've also discussed that in the last 10 years, the two-wheeler segment has seen the lowest sales. Of the last 10 years, two-wheeler segment has seen the lowest sale of the last 10. Now why this two-wheeler? Because इसकी demand यहाँ नहीं है. इसकी demand यहाँ इसलिए नहीं है because यहाँ पे jobs नहीं बनी है. This or maybe the agriculture sector. And why this job has not been created? Two sectors don't have very good incomes. One is agriculture and the other is MSME. Agriculture, because of the, why agriculture the incomes are low? Not after, वो तो अभी पहुंचा ना इंडिया में. Why is incomes low in agriculture in India? Because the share of population engaged in agriculture is very high. If 45% of the people of the workforce is engaged and they're only producing 18% of GDP, that means the income share is very low of agriculture. MSME faced 2-3 different problems. We started with demonetization, GST, and then the pandemic. So here the incomes are low. Now if the incomes are low, that means this multiplier effect has been weakened because यहाँ पे jobs अगर create हुई भी हैं तो the forward linkage has not been created a strong linkage because the money earned is very less. So they are not able to demand a lot of goods and services. Their backward end would also have less jobs. This is the criticality of industry. If this is not performing well, you are going to have repercussions throughout the economy. The forward linkage is what creates the demand for other goods. अगर उनके पास पैसे नहीं होंगे, you are going to have this problem. This is why during the pandemic, a lot of corporates wrote to the government in the UK and the European countries that give the money in the hands of people. इनको पैसे दोगे तो ही हमारा good बिकेगा कुछ. If you are not going to give money in the hands of people, nobody is going to buy our goods. So this is the significance of industry, that it has a significant multiplier or a spillover effect, having forward and backward linkages, which can create one job in industry is going to create 3 to 4 jobs here, 2 to 3 jobs here. This is the multiplier or the spillover effect. The same spillover effect is also of the infrastructure sector. Both have significant multiplier or spillover effects. Why this multiplier or spillover effects is less in services? हम बैकवर्ड लिंकेज या फॉरवर्ड क्या प्रॉब्लम है वहां पे? दिस इज द बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम इन सर्विसेज. देर इज वेरी लेस ऑफ द रॉ मटेरियल और इंटरमीडिएट विच दे आर यूजिंग. दे डोंट हैव अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग बैकवर्ड लिंकेज. यहाँ पे प्रोडक्शन एक्टिविटीज हैं दोनों जगह, इंडस्ट्री और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, विच आर गोइंग टू रिक्वायर्ड अ लॉट ऑफ बैकवर्ड लिंकेजेस, विच इज वेरी वीक इन सर्विसेज. दे हैव अ वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग फॉरवर्ड लिंकेज बिकॉज द जॉब क्रिएशन इन सर्विसेज इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट गुड इनकम्स. There are 2 problems why it is weak. One, backward linkage nahi hai. And what is the problem here? In services, what is the problem? So, skilled labor. So, number of jobs that are going to be created here are less. The number of jobs are going to be limited because in services is mostly skill intensive. The number of jobs in industry would be more. So employment generation capacity, and this is what we said, that another benefit of industry is that a lot of industrial sectors have very high employment elasticity. This is what the survey says, that the benefit is not just multiplier or spillover effect. There are a lot of industries that have a very high employment elasticity. Employment elasticity in services is low. What is employment elasticity? The concept of elasticity is that you measure the responsiveness of one variable across another variable. For example, price elasticity of demand, how the demand changes when price changes. This is measuring the responsiveness of one variable across another. This is employment elasticity, how much of your employment is changed if growth of percentage. If you have a percentage growth change, how much of the job change you are going to have. And this employment elasticity is positive for various industrial sectors. What industrial sectors create more jobs when growth increases? One is textile. What is the other? Construction. Economics survey padha hai kuch logon ne. This is the 2 sectors they have mentioned. One is textile and the other is construction. Even one more sector where the growth will change, the employment will also increase positively, that is also your footwear. Apparel, leather, construction, all of these sectors are having positive employment elasticities. That means with increase in growth, you are going to create more and more jobs. This is the benefit of industry over services. That is why you need a vibrant industrial sector having multiple or having a multiplier or a spillover effect and having very high employment elasticity. Many sectors in industry have employment elasticity which is high, not all sectors. But in services, this employment elasticity is not very high. Then what else is the benefit of industry? Industry in all of these purposes also creates a demand for services. It also creates demand for services. For example, what is the most basic thing service required for industry? Banking. You need financial services. You need insurance. In fact, this is your reason for improvement in service sector in India. 1991 to 2001, we had a significant growth of industry. In fact, it slowed down after 97 when the Asian financial crisis hit. 2001 onwards, till today, we have a significant growth of high technology services. Computer, IT, business process engineering, all of these services are seeing high growth in India. Now this is for most people, this is for few people. But the benefit of these two is they are going to create demand for further services. Consider the level of health services that have been improved. All of this has happened because of the improvement. The moment you are going to earn more, you are going to demand all of these services. So the growth of services is also linked to industry, which is also one of its forward linkage. So when people start earning more, they're not only buying goods, they're also demanding a lot of other services. And also for doing the process of industry, that is for doing the production process, you need all of these services. You need financial services, you need insurance, you need logistics. This is why industry is important for any economy. Any other benefits of industry? What could be the benefits of industry? Because if you understand the benefits, then only it is going to help you in mains. You're going to write answers why we need to create more jobs here. What exactly is important here? Labor intensive, employment elasticity, investment. So you can have investment in agriculture and services also. Why is it slightly better than services? Services, the employment elasticity would be less. It produces goods which are offering you huge export opportunity. Export-led growth is very favorable because the goods are tradable. Services has both tradable and non-tradable. A large segment is also non-tradable. Some services are tradable also. इसी वजह से service exports हैं. But this sector is completely tradable. You can send intermediate goods outside, you can send final goods and services. We've discussed a lot of trade agreements. Without having a vibrant industry, you are not going to create any trade agreements. You don't have any goods. Remember, we discussed when your FTA is going to give you benefits. When is the FTA going to give benefits? Non-tariff barriers would be removed. What are the conditions? Internal conditions क्या हैं? जब आपके पास कुछ production होगी, competitiveness होगी या production होगी, तभी आपका good tradable होगा. So to get export opportunities and to have export-led growth, this is what a lot of Southeast Asian countries, including China, Taiwan, everyone has done. They've got export-led growth because the goods which they were producing were all tradable. This is one of the benefits of industry. What else? Improve the livelihood वो तो as a result of this है. If your high employment elasticity spill over, jobs create होंगे तो पैसे आएंगे. See, employment is a function of production. हमें employment ज़्यादा बनानी है, तो इसलिए industry में ज़्यादा बनानी ज़रूरत है because of these benefits. Another is all of your technology production. How will you have if you don't have any production activities? How exactly is going to country improve on its technology frontier? How exactly? Services can only help you produce the idea, research and development. How do you bring that idea into reality? That is only going to help with the production facilities. So for development of technology, you have to have a vibrant manufacturing sector. Without a vibrant manufacturing sector, you are not going to have any technological base. No matter you go to space, you have genetic engineering, do anything, everything has to happen in the manufacturing sector. वो rocket भी बनेगा तो वो यहीं बनेगा. So you have to, for increasing the technology coefficient of your production, you have to invest in manufacturing. Value addition in manufacturing has to go from lower end sectors to higher end sectors. Technology frontier also your industry is important. Is this clear why industry is important? Protection, this is where we started. This is where we started. Right? The moment you are going to have outside dependent, you have more imports, you are volatile. In fact, it compromises a lot of your sovereignty. You cannot take a lot of diplomatic decisions because you have import dependence. वो sanctions का सारा role इसलिए आता है because you have dependence. Is it clear? Now, what exactly is included in industry? This is what has been explained in the first, significance of industry. What exactly is included in industry? There are 4 sectors. One is mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas, water supply and construction. This is the government classification of Indian industry. They measure the performance across 4 sectors. We've already discussed, how do we measure gross value addition? How do we measure GDP in India? GDP in India is measured through which method? GV at basic price, but how? What is basic price? Factor cost plus factor cost. Yeah. What exactly, how is GDP calculated in India? We do it through the production method or value added method. For production or value added method, you have to divide the whole economy into different sectors. One of the sectors is industry. We include mining and quarrying, which is a primary activity, but in industry. Mining and quarrying is a primary activity because it is dealing with natural resources, but we still include it in industry. Then manufacturing, this is the most important component of industry, that is value addition, production of goods. Electricity, gas, water supply, utility services, a part of infrastructure sector, and construction. Construction is something which RBI includes in service, the government includes in this industry itself. So we are going to go with the government classification. Construction is part of industry. Roughly industry is part of 30% of your total GDP. 27 to 30% is the rough average. In this, the maximum comes from manufacturing. Manufacturing hovers around 16 to 17%. Then you have construction and a similar for electricity and mining and quarrying. This is the percentage addition to GVA. See, these are the numbers which will help you write answers in mains. How much is our total GVA addition from industry? It is 30%. Manufacturing is 16 to 17%. This is very less. In fact, this has been stagnant to 16-17% right from 91. This is one of the reasons. Manufacturing for most of the economies which have good incomes as compared to India have this ratio somewhat around 30% or more. हमारा इंडस्ट्री तो है 30% टोटल, where we include everything. हमारा मैन्युफैक्चरिंग नहीं है. Most of the Southeast Asian economies, they have more than 30% addition coming from industry, manufacturing, not industry. Industry cumulative is 30. So again, what is important here is the parameters, how exactly we are performing. But again, the significance is less. एक rough idea होना चाहिए कि manufacturing and industry का क्या performance है इंडिया में. Now the performance in the previous 1 year, what they have talked about, first they have talked about the performance improvement from 21 to 22. This is something where we have improved. And 22 to 23, the first half, this is where we have slowed down. 23, the industry sector witnessed a modest growth of 4.1%, strong growth of 10.3. So this is where 10.3 happened and now we have 4.1. The reasons remain the same. What are the reasons for this slowdown? One is we have significant increase in prices of commodity. What are certain commodities which have got very expensive, which has caused problem in India? Initial pressures of oil. In fact, oil is something now is coming cheap. What else? Fertilizer. This is one of the most important component jiska prices have shot off the roof. This is why the subsidy on fertilizer has also increased too much. India does not produce most of the fertilizers in the country. A lot of it is imported from other countries. Supply chain disruptions, we discussed in external sector also. The cost of transportation has also gone up. Containers in short, and therefore the cost of, that is freight charges, have gone up significantly. Why these three reasons are mostly creating problem for us, because India has a significant dependence of imports. Why do we don't have a production in the country? Why are we dependent on imports? Why does India have such a huge import dependence? See, there are two major reasons. Right now you have a problem in your, this is what we are going to discuss in startups also, the regulatory policy. This is the major reason why we have a problem. What are the various instances in regulatory policy that create import dependence in India? Regulatory policy kya kharab hai? Because after 1991, see, two things happened. After 91 till 91, we had mostly dominance of the state PSUs. They were producing and the state was controlling the private sector. After 91, the state changed to a regulator. Yahin pe sari problem hai. The state being a regulator has created the problem. We don't have a clear regulatory policy on usage of land, environmental clearances. What else? Labor. See, labor is not a very significant reason. Labor regulations ki wajah se what has happened is that we have moved from formal to informal. But that has not have a very significant impact on production activities. Skill of the labor, you can say, is one problem, but labor laws is not a restrictive factor, because if labor laws are a problematic thing for the industry, they have started employing informal labor. So industries, for example, construction जो services है, L&T or whatever are the big players, उनका भी तो growth हो रहा है. How are they growing? They are not growing. They are growing irrespective of the labor laws, because they are hiring people on contract. So restrictive labor laws can create a problem, that it can create exploitation of labor, but it cannot stop industry. वो quality of employment में फर्क डालेगा, industry फिर भी काम कर सकती है. In fact, if you see, what is the reason why so many industries are there in China? Because you have, the moment you create cheap labor, that means this is exploited. Cheap आप raw materials की बात करते हो, labor की नहीं. But in context of globalization, we only talk about cheap labor. Cheap labor means कि this is always going to be exploited. कि आप उसको कभी भी जो उसकी wage मिलनी चाहिए according to having a high standard of living, you're never going to give them, you're going to exploit them. तो India में भी it's the same thing. We use the cheap labor. Use means exploit. What regulatory policy? Single window clearance, broader things. Single window clearance तो India is given in more. Energy, the biggest problem India has in the availability of power. In fact, combine power and other logistics problem. Most of it is flowing through road. So this is why import. In fact, the reason why this all happened was because till 91, we had a policy of reservation for the small sector industry. This reservation, that means the goods will only be produced in the small sector. More than 800 products were in this list. The large sector was not allowed to produce because they had limitations of reservation. The moment you opened up in 1991, they had to compete here. They would not be able to compete, and therefore you have import dependence. वो capacity कभी India में बनी ही नहीं because आपने reservation दी small scale को. Large scale वो बनाना चाहता है after 91, but they have a problem here. They cannot get land, they have a problem in power, they have a problem in logistics. And the problem is why large sector could not develop despite getting the chance after 91, despite the regulatory policy. Most of your industrial sector, not high tech, most of the industrial sector, the technology has already matured. So now you have cost advantages on only two things. One is your quality and supply of labor, and the other is your level of infrastructure support. So this is why you have a problem in India, because यहीं पे दो आप cost advantage ले सकते हो, because technology mature हो चुकी है, textile में और ज़्यादा technology आएगी नहीं. So this is why they did not, and the regulatory policy was also not friendly. One of the problems was you had an inverted duty structure. For roughly 20 years, we had an inverted duty structure. What is inverted duty structure? The final product, the import was, the duty was less as compared to raw or intermediate. जब duty इन पे ज़्यादा होगी, इन पे less होगी, people are going to get more and more of imports. This is also a problem of your regulatory policy. because of the lobbying by various big industrial players, the import duties have on the final product have been kept less as compared to raw materials. So a combination of these factors, you have a problem that India does not have a lot of domestic production. India is mostly dependent on imports. This is why we see, अब जो भी प्रेशर है, इनपुट कॉस्ट प्रेशर, सप्लाई चेन डिसरप्शन या चाइना लॉकडाउन, वो इसलिए इतने इम्पैक्ट कर रहे हैं बिकॉज वी हैव अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिपेंडेंस ऑफ इम्पोर्ट्स. इफ यू वुड हैव डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी, दिस वुड हैव नॉट इम्पैक्टेड इंडिया. सो मोस्ट ऑफ द फैक्टर्स व्हाई इंडस्ट्रियल स्लो डाउन इज इम्पैक्टिंग इंडिया इज बिकॉज ऑफ द अकाउंट ऑफ import related factors. Then fading away of the base effect. What exactly is the base effect? As compared to the base year. So when we were moving from financial year 20 to financial year 21, here the growth would be positive or negative? The growth here was negative because of the pandemic. So if you have even smaller value creation or smaller growth, वो आपको बड़ा figure दिखेगा because you have a low base. Now this base effect will not work here because now you have a significant growth. So this is now a significantly higher base. This is you are going to see lower growth percentage. So the only Indian domestic reason is your base effect. Mostly are import related factors why industry growth has slowed down in the previous years. Then demand stimulus. From where exactly is the demand coming in the Indian economy? They've talked about two things. One, that you have Russia-Ukraine conflict. In fact, it talked about two things. One, Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the other is the COVID-19 that hit China. Now, what is the benefit for India here? What is the benefit for India here because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict or the COVID-19 that hit China? Food's not food insecurity, but also a lot of your industrial production where, no, they come from here. This is why we're seeing problem. This gives a chance to India to diversify its exports. It can diversify industrial production because people don't want to depend on China a lot, and also because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, India has a lot of opportunity to diversify its production and capture a lot of industrial space. This is an opportunity for India, though in the short term we are going to have cost. This is what it has explained. Industry has been gradually passing on higher production costs because of the inflationary pressures. The non-core retail inflation has been controlled as the weather extremities and interventions of the government have controlled. तो अभी what they are talking about के present production capacity क्या है, उसकी demand कहाँ से आ रही है. So exports, India is still able to do in certain sectors where they are able to control inflation, which is non-core retail inflation. What is non-core retail inflation? Non-core means food and fuel. This is something we are able to control because of two things in the financial year 22, not 23. So it's talked about 2 years, first financial year 22, then 23. We had high amount of retail. Non-core is something which we were able to control. This has given us benefit that we could export a lot of things because of the controlling production cost. Further, the demand has come from the internal dynamics. First, the same thing which we discussed in financial year 22 mein exports increased, and this have started decreasing because of the increasing inflation and interest rates. So same thing, financial year 22 the exports increased, but financial year 23 it has been reducing because of the global outlook, that is high amount of inflation outside, and also because of the increasing interest rate, something which we discussed in the external sector. So industrial performance increasing in 22, same exports increasing because we were able to control inflation. This year we have been slow, we have not covered this inflation and increasing interest rates. Financial year 23 mein we have seen a slowdown in exports. This is what is explained in terms of industrial. Next year also it is said consumption growth. अब हमें जब external नहीं मिल रहा है, export is not good. So what will help industrial production is consumption growth and investment in the domestic economy. Now what it is counting on, that industrial production is going to come from these two factors of the domestic economy, because export is not very friendly. We discussed outlook भी ये दिया है, we need to diversify product and geographies. So export growth नहीं आएगा. What has to come is the consumption expenditure in the country and investment demand in the country. This is what we have to depend on for growth in industry, because export is slowing down. Now it talks about investment demand in the country. Now investment demand in the country, how exactly are we going to create more investment demand? When are people going to take more loans? When the interest rate is low but the inflation is high. If the inflation is high, then how are we going to create the investment demand? If the interest rates are high, what is going to create investment demand? This is where they talk about the role of government. The government has to increase its capex. Now, how will government capex increase the investment demand? If the government capex increases, does it lead to crowding out or crowding in? It can lead to both. It depends on what situation is. How will it lead to crowding out? The most immediate thing that will happen is crowding out. Why? Because if your fiscal deficit is rising, government capex is increasing, fiscal deficit is rising, this means you have less funds, and increasing fiscal deficit also means increasing interest rates. When the government is intending to borrow more, that means the government is turning risky, people will demand more interest rate on the newly issued government bonds. So interest rates are increasing, you have less funds. This is why the present thing that is going to happen, crowding out. Then how exactly government capex is going to do this? This is what we discussed, private investment. Why private investment will happen in industry? We discussed there are two factors. One is you can improve the policy. The other is if you improve the supporting infrastructure. Manufacturing technology in most of the sectors have matured. Few sectors are high technology sectors. So two things would required is your regulatory policy, and the other is your supporting infrastructure. This government capex increase is going to provide supporting infrastructure. This supporting infrastructure is going to create conditions for private investment, and this is what we call as crowding in. The government expenditure can also crowd in private investment by providing them better conditions to work. And how can they provide them better conditions to work? By increasing the level of capital expenditure, by creating capital goods, that is infrastructure. So if government spends huge money in infrastructure, they are going to crowd in the private sector, because this is going to create better conditions for work for. In fact, one of the problems in India is the high amount of logistics cost. The moment government invests in logistics cost, you are going to crowd in the private investment. This is how the survey says more government expenditure. In fact, if you see the last 3-year budgets from financial year 20 to financial year 23, government has allotted a huge amount of money in infrastructure sectors. The capital expenditure for the government has been huge in the last 3 years, because this is how they want to create growth, by creating supporting infrastructure conditions. Why this relation is slightly difficult to achieve? Crowding out तो immediately हो जाएगा. जैसे expenditure बढ़ा, crowding out is immediately that will happen. Why this is slightly difficult to happen? Because one is whether this capacity generation, that is increased expenditure, is going to create the infrastructure or not. This is a very big issue, because infrastructure creation is long gestation. So this crowding in is a very big if, because it depends whether the money is delivering the project or not. Delivery of project is important here, not the spending. Spending से crowding out तो direct हो रहा है, because there is no link के कुछ और करना है. यहाँ पे you have to deliver the project, and also not just deliver a project, you also have to deliver. So two big things are important here. Crowding out will take a lot of time, because you need to deliver on the project, and also you need to ensure quality. Then only crowding in will happen. Crowding out is automatic. Crowding in is a long equation which will depend on other factors also. So this is how it is trying to create that government has crowded in private investment, consumption demand, export stimulus, and strengthening of the corporate balance sheet. Capacity utilization, how much we are using the government funds in various projects, is increasing. And the new investment in manufacturing sectors, they have increased 5 times because of all jump in the capital expenditure of central government. So central government ka capex is going to crowd in better capacity utilization and new investment projects. So everything is dependent on government spending the money in infrastructure projects. So this is where the investment demand is going to lead to this. Now private capital investment cycle. Here they have discussed how private capital investment cycle has worked. Now in this whole policy they have discussed 3 decades, 2000 to 2010, then 2010 to 20, and then 20 onwards. This is where they are discussing the investment cycles of the private sector. Now what the economic survey says, the 2000 to 2010, this was a period where India was seen as the next big potential emerging market economy. Why is India seen a very bright spot for growth? This is the thing which was there in this decade, which is right now also present. Why is India seen as a very potential, which has the potential to grow, emerging market economy? Market size. One, India has demand. Market size is huge. Then India has a very significant demography. And then India has, this is what Prime Minister mentions in every speech, India is also the mother of democracy. Why is smiling? Mother of democracy nahi hai. G20, this is a tagline, mother of democracy, where everyone is in jail. Demand, demography and democracy. This is what is going to create conditions. Everyone is jail in China also. So demand, demography, democracy. This is why India is the next big thing. Now when India is the next big thing, ये 20 साल पहले भी next big thing थी, आज भी वही है. Now potential emerging market economy because of demand, demography and democracy. Now this segment saw a huge expenditure in infrastructure, and since this is the time period when we started with the public-private partnerships, a high level of investment expenditure was seen in India. Now, after independence, very few times we have seen such a big shift in private investment from roughly 25% of GDP, this is private investment, we increased to more than 38% of GDP is been increasing in these 10 years, where people think infrastructure development and also a lot of other investments are going to happen in India, and most of it was private investment. This private investment big bulk was created by money flowing from this whole huge credit expansion happened on the back of banking structure. Public sector banks were one which fueled this high private investment. In fact, from where did they get savings? They'll have to channelize savings to get this private investment. Financial inclusion. See what happened here till 2000. We had a lot of, in the first decade, 91 to 2000, we had a failure of a lot of financial schemes. For example, we had also a failure in the stock market, that was the Harshad Mehta scam. Uske alawa, there were a lot of banking structure or small NBFCs created which were called as vanishing banks. So इस sector में बहुत सारे scams हुए that people did not trust other sources where to save money. They started saving money in banks. So this whole decade not just saw the growth of investment, they also saw the growth of domestic savings. Domestic savings and domestic investments were record high, 35% above both in this decade. So this is the decade where the investment, private companies and the banks are both. Banks are extending credit, private companies are accumulating a lot of debt. This is where their leverage was getting very high. Leverage is your how much debt you pile on as a percentage of your equity. A high amount of debt is what the private sector investment was taking, private sector was taking out. The leverage was very high. They were taking on a lot of loans. 2007 or 2008 onwards, we see a problem, global financial crisis. So this next 10 years is a problem. You have twin balance sheet issue. Now what is the problem here? Twin balance sheets. The moment we saw failures in these private investments after 2010, the stress in the corporate balance sheets, because they stopped paying loans, they got stressed. The corporate balance sheet got stressed because of the failure in the projects. This stress was now shifted to the banks. So what the survey is saying, 2000 to 2010, everyone has leveraged a lot, has taken a lot of debt from the banks. 2010 to 20, when we hit in the first 5 years, 2010 to 15, we hit with the twin balance sheet, जिसका recognition हुआ 2015 में, that we have huge amount of NPAs in the banking system, all because of the corporate balance sheet being stressed. Now all of this was being solved by the government in the next 5 years through introduction of one major reform, that was, apart from this there were a range of things that were dealing with these things. IBC was the most important. This is what it mentions. Apart from the various steps taken, IBC major tha. Now 2020 tak, what it is saying, that we have reduced the number of NPAs in the banks, and the corporates also, the private sector is also started deleveraging. They have consolidated their balance sheets now. They have reduced the debt they have. In the 2020 onwards, especially 22 onwards, the deleveraging has happened on a significant. They have consolidated their balance sheet up to 22. Now they are in a good position. And same thing, we have helped the banks through various mechanisms, not just IBC. उसके अलावा भी recovery through various other mechanisms. For example, asset reconstruction companies, recapitalization to the banks. A lot of money was provided through recapitalization to these banks. So now both of them are now in a position to now give more loans. So now what they are saying, we are in a situation where both can now start investment. So now what the survey is saying, private investment cycle is again towards more investment, because in the previous 5 years they have started consolidating their balance sheets, they have deleveraged a lot, they have reduced the debt. Now they are in a position to take more investment and start expansion. And since we have solved the problem for the banks also by giving them money to lend, they are the ones who are going to create economic activity. So this is what it has talked about, creation of investment across different sectors. So in the first decade of the new millennium, credit boom, financing, high levels of investment rates, 38% investment. The second decade you had twin balance sheet problem, both corporates and banks. Slow credit disbursement because they were deleveraging and the economy began to slow. So 2010 to 20, when they were deleveraging and they were facing crisis, there the economic growth was slowed down. In the second part of the second decade, 2015 to 20, this is where the government has taken a lot of reforms. IBC and also the equity base of public banks was strengthened. How was the equity base of the public sector banks strengthened? More NPAs. How will NPA strengthen the equity base? Recapitalization is what strengthened their equity base, because recapitalization se paisa mila government se. This is what strengthened them. For corporates, we created a lot of regulatory policies, ease of doing business, corporate tax rate, GST introduction, and this was the major step. Reduction in corporate tax rate. So now we are improving the situation for the banks, improving it for the companies. Implementation of, this is the most important scheme introduced in pandemic, that is emergency credit line guarantee scheme. This is what we'll discuss in detail. MSMEs को इसी scheme ने protect किया, very important scheme. Emergency credit line guarantee scheme. Digital infrastructure and ease of loans. So we are improving the situation. And when the situation has improved, this is where your credit is going to go up. The credit to private non-financial sector had a peak in December 2010 and had a low in 2018 to 83.8. This is deleveraging. यहाँ excess debt उठा लिया 113%, now 83.8. This is the deleveraging that happened in the next decade. 2010 तक high leverage, then next. Further, they have consolidated till June 2022. And now what the present situation they have, they have deleveraged significantly. Their debt to equity ratio has declined from 0.8 to 0.4. This is the leverage which has reduced. ये है deleveraging. Debt to equity ratio has been reduced. And the first half of financial year 23, we have seen interest rate coverage ratio of 5. Interest coverage ratio, I explained yesterday also. What is interest coverage ratio? Interest coverage ratio. Profit. How much earnings the company has, which are, whether they are equal for the interest payments they have in particular period of time, mostly 1 year. The more interest coverage ratio you have, the better the company will be. The problem that happened was the NPA problem stuck because the interest coverage ratio was less than 1. In fact, these were called as IC1 companies. Now what we are saying is interest coverage has improved to 5. That means on an average, the private corporates are strong enough. They have enough earnings to cover for their interest payments, and also they have reduced their leverage, where the debt to equity has fallen from 0.8 to 0.4. Numbers are not important, understanding these things are important. So across 3 decades, it has explained how first leveraging happened. A lot of debt was taken. In the first half, it started slowing down from 2010 to 15 because NPA problem solved in the next 5 years. Now next 5 to 10 years, we have a strong enough situation to start investment again. Both your interest coverage is good and the leverage is also less. And we have given money to the banks to advance loan to private players. So private investment cycle is again on the rise because of the improving situation of both the companies and the banks. Both the situation is now improving. This is the private investment cycle. The credit boom in the bank and enforcement of IBC code, capital 2. You have credit boom advances from 36% to 57% in 2014. NPA rose in the banks, 11.2% retained, controlled through IBC. Same thing explained in the banking system. पहले वो चीजें खराब हुई, फिर we started improving. And now we are saying that both the ratios have increased. Credit to risk-weighted assets and provisioning coverage ratio both have increased for the banks. Now what exactly is CRAR? And why is improved CRAR? That is high amount on CAR, is it better for the banks or bad? In fact, both these ratios, high capital adequacy ratio and high provisioning coverage ratio, these are indicators showing strength of the banks or problem in the banks. Problem, how problem? Earn कैसे करेंगे? Okay. So how is that a problem? How do you know what is the quality of lending? What is CAR showing? What is capital adequacy ratio? So this capital which they have as a percentage of, if they have more capital as a percentage of risk-weighted assets, this shows the bank is able to cover its all of the problems, or it is not. That means its risky behavior is less. Free capital ज़्यादा है to cover. So high capital adequacy ratio might lead to less profit, but shows that bank has enough capacity to cover for the losses. This shows the strength of the bank कि हमारा high capital adequacy ratio है. प्रॉफिट कम बना पाएंगे, प्रॉफिट रिस्की एक्टिविटी से भी बन सकता है, बट रिस्की एक्टिविटी इफ इट गोज रॉन्ग, हाउ कैन आई प्रोटेक्ट माई बैंक? सो इट्स नॉट नेसेसरी स्ट्रेंथ मीन्स मोर प्रॉफिट. More profit can come due to speculative risky activities also, which is not stable. So this is why high capital adequacy ratio means that the bank is stable enough, they have enough capital to cover for any of the losses they have. Now what is provision coverage ratio? Setting aside. Provision coverage ratio क्या है? What is provision? These type of questions is what can appear. वहाँ पे तो लिखा है कि high provision coverage ratio and high capital adequacy ratio. This shows the banks are strong enough. We saw two things for corporates कि interest coverage अच्छा है और debt to equity ratio अच्छा है. both show that the companies are good enough. UPSC asked this question interest coverage pe. High interest coverage ratio is stable or low interest coverage ratio is stable. Same thing can happen for the banks. AB indicators are showing whether the bank has good strength or is facing losses. What is provision covering ratio? What is the total number of NPAs it has and the provision it has as a percentage of NPAs? Now a high PCR shows good strength or bad? High PCR is good for the bank or not? You understand what is provision? For NPAs you have to keep certain money aside. For what is the provision which they have to keep for substandard asset? 15% is for substandard asset. Doubtful asset में 25, 40 और 100. This is what they have to keep. So now if provision is something which they have accumulated to cover for their NPAs, this shows the bank is strong enough. A high PCR and a high capital adequacy ratio says that bank has enough capital to cover for its losses. The enough capital to cover for its NPAs. अगर ज़्यादा provision रखा है तो enough capital है. Don't confuse it with profit. Profit कम हो सकता है in cases में. Because when you're keeping more provisions and you're keeping more capital, that means you're not doing business. But you are displaying strength that I have enough capital to protect against risk weighted and I have ever capital to protect against NPAs. कि मेरे पास enough capital है कि अगर कुछ भी risk होता है, दोनों मेरे metrics are strong enough. So increasing capital adequacy ratio and increasing provisioning coverage ratio is always considered good for the bank, displaying enough resilience. Enough resilience we have covered for industry through the interest coverage ratio and debt to equity ratio. Something which resilience of the country we measure through the debt service ratio. Okay, how much of earnings it has to cover for its debt. ये resilience country की है, ये resilience company की है, ये resilience bank की है. Don't confuse with profits here. Profits might be less. Is it clear? So high capital risk to the capital adequacy ratio and provisioning ratio stood at 16% and 71.5%. How much CAR has the RBI recommended for the banks? 9%. The moment it reduces, you can be placed under prompt corrective action. Then supply response of industry. We measure the production activity in industry through certain indicators. What are the indicators through which we measure the production activity? There are 3 indicators which Indian government uses. One is your purchaser managers index. It comes for both manufacturing and services. Then the other is index of industrial production, and the third, how do we measure the index? Both of these things have been asked in UPSC prelims. IIP में पूछा था कि सबसे ज़्यादा weight किसका है, और what are the various components of IIP. The other is index of 8 core industries. There are 3 indicators for measuring the production in industry, the supply in industry. One is PMI manufacturing, the other is index of industrial production, and the third is index of 8 core industries. Who produces PMI manufacturing? IHS Markit. It is a private company which produces PMI manufacturing. It is based on what? It is a survey based indicator where questions are posed to not just managers index hai, but to a lot of different corporates, exactly what is happening in the business situation. Survey based indicator hai PMI manufacturing, released by a private body, S&P. S&P ने acquire किया हुआ है IHS Markit. This PMI index is produced by other private players also. US में काफ़ी लोग हैं और भी जो PMI index देते हैं, but this is the most famous one, the PMI manufacturing given by S&P or given by market. Now it is asking survey, or it is displaying the manufacturing activity of what entities? Private, public, both. Private industry in manufacturing, public industry in manufacturing, or both private and public. यही क्वेश्चंस हैं. प्राइवेट इंडस्ट्री कवर करता है सिर्फ पीएमआई मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, इट डजंट कवर द पब्लिक सेक्टर. नाउ इंडेक्स ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन, द नंबर इट गिव्स फॉर द होल इकोनॉमी, द बेसलाइन इज 50. इफ इट इज मोर देन 50, दिस शोज expansion and less than 50 is contraction. Very basic things you have to know about the indicators, because these type of indicators have already been asked. Index of industrial production produced by whom? CSO earlier, now NSO. And the frequency? This is produced every month. And whether this is a value indicator or a volume indicator, it indicates the value of production every month or volume of production every month. This is a volume based indicator. Volume of production. What are the three subsectors of IIP? Manufacturing. See, there are two types of classification. First is your purchasing manager's index, survey based economic indicator. There are indices and sub indices based various questionnaires. Features a headline number, above 50 it is expansion, below 50 it is contraction. Index of industrial production. Index shows growth rates in different industry groups for the stipulated period of time. It comes every month and it is a volume indicator. There are three sectors covered: mining, manufacturing, and manufacturing having the highest weight, mining second, third is. Weights are also important. Weights पे भी question आ चुका है. 8 core industries का they had asked which of the following has the highest weight amongst the 8 core industries. So mining, manufacturing, electricity, and also they have another classification which is based on goods. Primary goods, intermediate goods, capital, infrastructure, consumer durables, and consumer non-durables. So two types of classification it does is one is on the sector. So sector may be subsectors they have divided, and is second is based on the class of goods. So two types of things coming from the index of industrial production done by NSO every month. This is something weights and the sectors should be remembered here also. What are the weights? Primary goods have the highest. What is the base year? 2011-12. They revised it from 2004-5 to 2011-12 in 2017. The base year is 11-12. They also changed the weights, added new products, revised the IIP. Next is index of industrial or the 8 core industries. Who produces? Office of Economic Advisor, Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. This same Office of Economic Advisor produces another index, WPI. So WPI or Index of 8 Core Industries is coming from the same office, that is Office of Economic Advisor. And this Office of Economic Advisor is different from the Chief Economic Advisor. Uska office is different, it's ministry. This is under DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce, that is under Ministry of Finance. तो चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर से कोई रिलेशन नहीं है इसका. बेस ईयर इज 2011-12. These are the 8 different industries. The highest is of petroleum goods. When UPSC asked this question, तब electricity था. They revised this also. Electricity answer था. Electricity was most. This was revised after the exam, and now petroleum has the highest weight. The second highest weight is of. Third is steel. So index of 8 core industry, index of industrial production, and IHS market का purchaser manager index manufacturing. They have a purchaser manager index for services also. That is a private indicator. This is for India. 2 indicators, ICI and IIP. दोनों पे questions आ चुके हैं. Then supply side, steady growth in what growth has happened, very less significant. You just need to know rough idea के बढ़ रहा है कम हो रहा है. Now why the growth has slowed down in industry, they have explained the reasons from the supply side. Supply side, one of the most prominent reason it has explained is seasonality, that is high amount of rainfall. And rainfall will adversely affect 2 major sectors. One is mining and the other is constructions. So mining and construction activities were impacted supply side due to rainfall. And if you have a higher rainfall, you have a contraction in electricity also because of the cooler temperatures. The electricity supply would be less. Manufacturing output also has been constrained because we had a problem that companies during the pandemic and also later had built a large amount of inventory. And inventory is something which they were diluting first. Supply side production nahi badhai. because first they'll dilute their inventory and then only they'll supply more. So supply side contraction happened because of rainfall and because of inventory. High amount of inventory that got piled up. In fact, what is the reason for high amount of inventory? Why high inventory? Lower demand. Problem is that you have right after pandemic, when the lockdown was opened, you had a huge amount of pent up demand. From financial year 20 to financial year 22, these 2 years you have a significant amount of pent up demand for which the supply went up. अब जब pent up demand आपकी it is going to go down, supply आपने ज़्यादा कर लिया तो ही आपका inventory है. To supply more goods right after the pandemic to cover for the pent up demand, you had increased production, supply was high. The moment pent up demand started slowing down, this was reducing, you had excess of supply leading to inventory, increasing amount of stocks. Then various sectoral performance, I think they have started. Bank credit to industry, yes, bank credit to industry, they have discussed how MSME credit to industry is increasing. Not just large industry is increasing, but MSME is also increasing because we have one very important scheme which started during the pandemic as a part of Atmanirbhar, that is, it has 3 different components, but mostly it is targeting the MSME sector. It targets other sectors also. It is targeting the health sector, it is targeting tourism sector, every sector is targeted, but most of the industry that has got money here is MSME. Now what is emergency credit line guarantee scheme? Government is giving, who is giving guarantee, which ministry? These things are Ministry of Commerce. Ministry of Commerce is giving guarantee, okay. Amazed at the confidence. मतलब गलत बोलना है, कितने confidence से बोलना है. Ministry of Commerce. This is under the Ministry of, okay, again confidence. Department of Financial Services. This is what is running this scheme, the Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. What is the organization that is managing this? National Credit Guarantee Corporation, which has been established under this. After 2013-14, all of the credit guarantee schemes of the government are managed by one organization, that is the National Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is 100% owned subsidiary of the government working under the Department of Finance. This is what is running this scheme. So now what exactly is happening under Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme? Collateral free. So what exactly, who is giving money to whom? Banks are giving money to MSMEs. So what is the government doing here? There are certain member lending institutions, those who have been provided a guarantee from this organization so that they don't stop the lending to MSME. And how much of credit they are providing? How much of guarantee is provided? So these are the small features you have to remember of this scheme. ये बहुत important scheme है. This is something which has helped the MSME sector to default on their payments, को नहीं हो पाया, and also they had to continue the business. They wanted more credit. All of these MSME, up to 20% of their outstanding credit is what they can take more loans, and for which the government is going to provide, or this organization is going to provide 100%. Whole loan is being covered. It is a 100% guarantee. 100% guarantee, you can take 20% of your outstanding credit as a loan further. This National Credit Guarantee Corporation is going to cover the guarantee. So 20% of your outstanding credit, you can get a new loan, for which guarantee will be provided by the government. This is what has sustained the MSME credit. Otherwise, we have a problem in the MSME after the pandemic. Moratorium भी दिया है. मुद्रा लोन्स इज न्यू लोन्स विच यू वांट फॉर स्टार्टिंग अ बिजनेस. ये आपका डिफॉल्ट ना हो तो आउटस्टैंडिंग क्रेडिट का 20% और लोन ले सकते हो विदाउट गारंटी. प्रॉब्लम इज पैंडेमिक में अ लॉट ऑफ एमएसएमई स्टार्टेड फेसिंग प्रॉब्लम्स बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द एमएसएमईज वर इन कॉन्टैक्ट सेक्टर्स. कॉन्टैक्ट सेक्टर्स का प्रोडक्शन कम हो गया तो वो अपने इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स कैसे दे. दिस वॉज अ प्रॉब्लम. सो गवर्नमेंट गिव दिस एमरजेंसी क्रेडिट लाइन के 20% और लोन ले लो विदाउट अ गारंटी, ताकि प्रॉब्लम ना हो, आपको क्लोजर ना हो आपका. To sustain them, this is what they provided 100% guarantee. Mudra loans are loans which are given for new entities. जो स्मॉल टिकट लोन्स हैं टू स्टार्ट अप बिजनेस, ये प्रेजेंट एमएसएमईज को इन्होंने बहुत सपोर्ट किया. एंड इनफैक्ट देयर आर 3 डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज ऑफ ईसीजीएलसी. थर्ड कैटेगरी को एक्सटेंड किया. यू हैव टू गो ऑन द फीचर्स देयर ऑल्सो, जस्ट सी व्हाट ऑल सेक्टर्स आर कवर्ड बिकॉज दैट कैन ऑल्सो बी आस्क्ड. होटल्स एंड हेल्थ सेक्टर को अभी गवर्नमेंट ने एक्सटेंड किया है ईसीजीएलसी. दिस स्कीम इज वेरी सिग्निफिकेंट. 100% guarantee coverage, and this is your National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company working under the Department of Finance, working as the various credit guarantee funds. The entity operating is National Credit Guarantee, and it is not just the banks, it is also NBFCs. Is there an interest subvention in this scheme? Is the loan that is coming, is there an interest subvention? Few things which they have done. Amount of credit to be extended is 20% of the outstanding loan. तो इतना आप पैसा ले सकते हो. 100% गारंटी कवरेज है NCGL GCT से. लोन अप टू 50 करोड़ एंड टर्नओवर. दिस इज व्हाट इज द एलिजिबल बोरोवर. एलिजिबल बोरोवर इसके 3 डिफरेंट कंपोनेंट्स है, 1.0, 2.0 एंड वेयर द एलिजिबिलिटी इज डिफरेंट. So you need to check what exactly is the eligibility and which sectors are covered. What is the idea of interest rate? Is there a subvention? Can the banks charge any interest rate? What is the subvention? It has been capped. Ceiling रखा है, इससे ऊपर interest नहीं होगा. 9.25 for banks and 14% for NBFC. You can't charge more than this. There's a ceiling on these loans that you can't charge more than these interest rates. This is the major intervention apart from providing guarantee. Also, they have provided a moratorium period for 1 year that you don't have to pay. All of these conditions which have helped the MSME deal with the pandemic. So this scheme is not just important for prelims, it is also important for mains. Because one of the biggest problem MSMEs face in the country is they don't get credit from formal sources. And why don't they get credit? Why are they not getting credit? One is they don't have collateral. इसीलिए government ने scheme is centered around providing unsecured loan, collateral free loan. What is the other benefit, or why are they not getting credit? What? More risk. That could be in any business. What is the problem? See, more risk के हिसाब से तो फिर पैसे मिलेंगे नहीं इनको कभी. Some sectors are not going to give money because if banks are going to think about profit, they are going to use that money only in trusted sources. या ऊपर से फोन आएगा. दो ही काम होंगे. Incapability to pay back. No, that's not. Incapability वही वाली credit worthiness बात हो गई. The problem they're not getting credit is because they don't have financial management. They don't maintain their record books. We don't know what exactly is their earning sources. We don't know what is their credit position. MSMEs का biggest problem is they don't maintain their account books properly. The banks don't have a record what exactly is their performance, without which they don't offer them loans. This is the major problem. In fact, this is what, there are various interventions by the banking system which is helping them do this. A lot of apps, lending apps, a lot of neobanks, all of these structures are helping the MSMEs maintain their financial books so that they can get more and more loans. Maximum from the date of disbursement, tenure for the loan. So all of these conditions have been decided. Features कुछ भी पूछे जा सकते हैं. You have capping of interest rate, 100% guarantee and 20% of credit amount. And the amount will be given through member lending institutions. Government पैसा नहीं दे रही है. To be clear, you can have a statement here that government is giving funds directly to MSME. Lending institutions, banks और NBFCs पैसा देंगे. Government सिर्फ guarantee दे रही है through National Credit Guarantee Trust, which is under the Department of Financial Service, Ministry of Finance. It is not Ministry of Commerce. Private scheduled commercial banks list है पूरी. Most of the banks are there. ये सब कुछ public sector banks क्या ही करेंगे. This we discussed resilient FDI flow in manufacturing sector. Again, financial year 21 to 22, we have significant improvement. $21.3 billion is what FDI has come in. Problem है 22 के बाद. Rise in uncertainty due to the monetary tightening. We have fall of FDI. So यहाँ से यहाँ improvement है, यहाँ से यहाँ is fall. Same trend everywhere. 21 to 22, 22 to 23 less. No priority sector. Why would they come under priority sector? Priority sector तो completely different है. Total loans दो तो वहाँ count हो. दिस वी आर आस्किंग देम टू गिव लोन्स, गारंटी गवर्नमेंट दे रही है. एंड येस MSME के अगर उसमें प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर का आपका कम है वो काउंट होगा वहाँ. जो नॉर्मल कंडीशंस हैं प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर की, दे आर गोइंग टू ऑपरेट एंड यू आर एडवांसिंग मोर लोन, तो वो काउंट हो जाएगा प्रायोरिटी में, क्योंकि MSME का भी एक 10% यू हैव टू गिव, सो दैट विल बी काउंटेड अंडर प्रायोरिटी सेक्टर. सेक्टर वाइज FDI, मैक्सिमम FDI is in computer service and hardware, second is in services, third in, this we discussed yesterday also in FDI, maximum in computer software hardware services, and then in trading. And you'll find most of the activities of the resilient flow in all of this is creating very less jobs. FDI in India does not create a lot of jobs. All of these sectors are very less job creating. FDI policy reforms, 100% FDI under automatic route for, see these three features you have to remember, these things can be asked in statement. 100% in coal, 26% under streaming of न्यूज़ एंड करंट अफेयर्स थ्रू यूट्यूब. तो जिन लोगों की न्यूज़ चैनल में जॉब गई है वो 26% FDI के साथ यूट्यूब चैनल खोल सकते हैं. So news and current affairs through digital media, it is 26% FDI, 74% control will be yours. A lot of people have done this. 100% FDI permitted in intermediaries or insurance intermediaries. To be clear here, insurance intermediaries, brokers के ऊपर 100% FDI है. Insurance में FDI 100% नहीं है. Insurance में we'll see in service sector, what is the insurance FDI allowed? 74%. Last year itself government has changed 49 to, and is it automatic or government approval? Confidence. Another important thing, to curb the acquisitions of Indian companies by foreigners, the government in 2019-20 itself gave a condition which shares a land border with India. Any country which shares a land border. The problem here was, because of the pandemic, a lot of Indian companies were in trouble. So you could have a situation where the foreign direct investments are trying to take control of these companies. So anyone who is sharing a land border with India, अगर आपको control लेना है, you have to take permission of government. So we wanted to control, because this was something was seen from China. A lot of troubled companies were being taken up, acquisition by foreign players. So whoever has a land border with India, you have to take permission from government. So 100% FDI in coal, 26% in news through digital media, and 100% in insurance intermediaries, not in insurance. And this to control for the control. Foreign investment facilitation portal. Government का एक foreign institutional promotion board था, वो abolish करके they have created this institutional facilitation portal, which is a single point interference for FDI. दो चीजें की हैं गवर्नमेंट ने. फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल प्रमोशन बोर्ड हटा के they have created a body called Invest India, which is a facilitation cell, and foreign investment facilitation portal, single window clearance for any FDI coming in India. This is a single window clearance mechanism. Single window clearance of applications which are coming through government approval. So these are the FDI reforms taken up by the government. MSME importance. This is mostly important for mains. You can use this information. Contribution 29% to 30% in total GDP, and for manufacturing GDP it is 36%. This is the data which you can use. More than 40%, roughly 40% is their contribution in exports. Contribution in manufacturing GDP is roughly 36%. In total GDP it is 29%. How come manufacturing exports are so high? Or how come MSME share in exports is so high? India ka manufacturing export is not good. Then how come MSME? Not the global turmoil. Most of the India's economic activity is happening through MSMEs only. Large sector is not that vibrant. MSME ही ज़्यादा है. In fact, India has a problem of missing middle. Large number of small players and very small amount of large players. Middle sector is missing. Steps taken to help MSMEs. 20,000 subordinate debt, equity infusion through Self-Reliant India Fund. What is Self-Reliant India Fund? Again important. Waiving of global tender requirement. These two things can be asked. What is Udyam portal and what is Samadhan portal? What are the functions of Udyam portal and Samadhan? What is Self-Reliant India Fund? This is a fund of funds which is created by the government to help the MSMEs. Money is being provided through a range of daughter funds. This is a fund of funds where the government has provided 50,000 crore equity. Daughter funds के through वो equity infusion होगा. The idea here is the government is infusing, वो shares लेगा उन MSME में जहाँ भी पैसे देगा. This is your idea of self-reliant India Fund, brought up for MSMEs for equity infusion. You have to be clear, it is not debt infusion, it is equity infusion. Stress debt के लिए 20,000, global tender requirement not there, Udyam portal for registration and Samadhan portal for grievance redressal. Any problems which they have on cash flow or anything, Samadhan portal, they can register. Central Public Sector Enterprise, CPECs, have been brought under the Trade Receivable Discounting System. This is something which we discussed. What is Trade Receivable Discounting System? This is a factoring platform. What is the relevance of CPEs to come on the factoring platform? What is the relevance of Central Public Sector Enterprises to come on this platform? What are factor service? We discussed yesterday, factors. Because, see, if central public sector enterprises are taking material from MSME, and the biggest problem the MSMEs face is that they don't get payments, delayed payments hai. So they can use the invoices to raise money from the bank or the NBFCs on this platform. But uske liye they have to take the CP also on the platform, क्योंकि authorization ये देंगे कि हाँ invoice है. Without the participation of CPEC, they are not going to raise fund on the base of invoice. कोई भी जो bank or NBFC or any other financial institution who is going to participate as a factor to provide the funds, it will need the authorization from the person who has not paid for the invoice. Without this, they are not going to get any benefit. In fact, Tread's platform or any factoring business in India faces a problem because the people who raise the invoice or people who have not paid for the invoice, they don't participate. They don't allow this. So government has made any PSU having turnover more than 200 crore, they have to participate on Treads. This is one thing which they help the MSME to tackle the problem of delayed payments, so that they can raise funds through invoices. Another platform for grievance redressal, that is Champions Ministry of MSME. Another program, again this is also important, that is your Raising and Accelerating MSME Performance RAM program. This program is with the help of World Bank. World Bank has given a significant loan for this program. So RAMP program is a World Bank led program helping the MSMEs on various institutions and governance, providing market credit, technology upgradation and addressing of delayed payments and technology. RAMP program is a World Bank led program where the World Bank has given a loan and is providing support in terms of all the problems faced by MSMEs. Greening means improving the green technology, green renewables or any green technology for use of reducing the carbon emissions. Rest sector-wise electronics and all the service sector we'll discuss after a break. See, next we have the performance of various sectors. इसकी थोड़ी probability in coming in the exam is less. These are mostly facts, specific sectors. अब सर्वे की ये ड्यूटी है बताना कि क्या हुआ है, so they are doing this. और हमारी ड्यूटी है इसकी क्लास. 3 industries, significant growth. One is mobile phones, consumer electronics and industrial electronics. One important fact here, India has become the second largest mobile manufacturer globally. Three industries powering the growth in the electronic segment: mobile phones, consumer electronics, and industrial electronics. India, second largest manufacturer of mobile phones. The various schemes for this sector: there are PLI schemes for large scale electronics manufacturing and PLI scheme for IT hardware. PLI, I hope, is clear. Production linked incentive. Incentives are based on your production turnover, incremental turnover. Based on that, the government is going to provide incentives. Then there's a scheme for manufacturing of electronic components and semiconductors, that is PEX. And this is the major scheme which is important. This is a program for next 20 years where the government has allotted 75,000 crore. This I'll explain कि semiconductor industry में what is happening. One, the semiconductor industry, they've also explained that US government has started a CHIPS Act where they're giving a lot of financing for manufacturing of semiconductors. Right now, 90% of these semiconductors are manufactured in only one country, that is Taiwan. TSMC and USMC, these are the two companies which are manufacturing most of the semiconductors. The world saw a significant failure during the COVID pandemic, significant shortage, and semiconductor is something which is used in almost all of the electronic items now. ये bulbs भी जो आ रहे हैं, smart bulbs, everything is now requiring a semiconductor. Now the government is focusing on the semiconductor across the whole the chain of semiconductors. The first activity is your research activity. The second is design. Next is manufacturing. And the third is assembly, testing and packaging segment. This is the whole supply chain of the semiconductor. You do the initial research. Research and design mostly happen at one place. After the design, manufacturing. Taiwan यहाँ leader है. Not in design, manufacturing. Design में US and Korea. These are the two companies which are world leaders in design. But manufacturing after the design happens in Taiwan. And then you have assembly, testing and packaging facilities. This assembly, testing, packaging is out of the all four activities. This is the most labor intensive. Out of the all four, ये भी labor intensity is less, but out of the all four, labor intensity is high in assembly, testing and packaging. At a less cost, you can employ more labor. Now at the first field, this is where the government has started the design linked incentive scheme. Why the government is focusing mostly on design? Because out of the total engineers in design, 20% are Indian engineers. But most of these engineers work for outside firms, not for Indian firms. So what the government is saying, start the design in India itself. We are going to provide design linked incentives. There are two types of design linked incentives which the government is giving. One is for the product. That is, if you start design in India itself, we are going to provide you 50% of your reimbursement on capital expenditure. Per client, maximum we are going to give 15 crore per applicant. So for product, if you start designing in India itself, we are going to give you 50% of your expenditure. One applicant will get a 15 crore maximum limit. The second is called as the deployment linked incentive. One is product linked incentive, the other is deployment linked incentive. Now if one is your design, the product is happening here. The other is when the product design has been sent to other countries also. That means when you start selling this product to someone else, we are going to give you certain financial incentive based on your turnover or sales you have in the next 5 years. अगर आप ये deploy करोगे अपना design कहीं पे, this is where we are going to give you a deployment linked incentive. So one, you start establishing the product itself here, and second, if you deploy this product somewhere, for example, if Indian design company is selling this design to a manufacturer somewhere else, for example, Apple ने यहाँ design किया है but वो manufacture कहीं और हो रहा है, so that is your deployment linked incentive. The moment you are going to have certain turnover or sales, आपको हम 4 to 6% incentive देंगे. So two types of incentives under design linked incentive, focusing on design. For manufacturing, the government is giving funds for up to 20,000 crore for establishment of 2 fabrication units. The government has a target for start manufacturing of semiconductors. They are giving for 2 fabrication units. Apart from these fabrication units, the government has also started giving, under the semiconductor policy also, there is a display technology, LCD, LED. Display technology के लिए भी the government is giving funds for 2 fabrication units. So under manufacturing, the government is giving money for 2 types of units. One is manufacturing of semiconductors, the other is manufacturing of display technology, your LCDs, LEDs. 20,000 crore for these establishment of 2 fabs. This is slightly questionable because here the limitations are huge. Technology has already been displayed. So what exactly is the benefit? This is slightly questionable, but government is still giving money because 100% of the products here are coming from outside. Both semiconductors and display fabs, both of these things, India does not have any significant production. Semiconductor की commercial production बिल्कुल भी नहीं है India में. Same thing, display technology also. Mostly coming from which country? Display technology? South Korea. Both Samsung and what is the other? LG. Both of these significant display technologies are coming from South Korea. No technology development here in India. So manufacturing of display and semiconductors, both are going to happen in India. 2 fabs here, 2 fabs here. And another, the government is targeting the assembly testing packaging segment. Financial incentives are given for this and other complex semiconductors. Both are being covered under one scheme. So the semiconductor whole chain is being covered under the plan. Design linked incentives, manufacturing 2 fabs, and assembly testing packaging along with certain complex semiconductors. This is the whole semiconductor support the government is giving. Setting up of semiconductor fabs in India, setting up of display fabs, the 2 manufacturing, setting up of compound semiconductors and assembly testing, marketing, packaging. Both part of the same. So assembly testing, packaging and compound semiconductors, 2 manufacturing slabs, and the third is your display or your design linked incentive. This is already design linked incentive. So 4 schemes for semiconductors. This is a 20-year plan giving upwards of 75,000 crore rupees for establishing semiconductor units in India. Why should India not invest? There is a strong reason for not investing in semiconductors. Opportunity, वो काफी चीजों की मिस हो गई है, but somehow you have to. Why semiconductor should not be done? Any electronics engineer who has studied is in engineering time. Complex नहीं, बनाना सबसे आसान है. Manufacturing is the most easiest thing. Design is complex. What is the problem? Ultra pure water you need, वो तो your logistics should be clear. You don't need sand, कुछ भी dirt नहीं होनी चाहिए, and also you need a lot of water. This is why setting up the unit in Gujarat is slightly questionable because they don't have water. Dry state है. In terms of water. Other dry तो वहाँ सब है. Electricity. No, why it is problematic to develop? See, the investments in manufacturing fab is very huge. You require thousands of crores, more than 20,000 crores for establishing one fab unit. What is the problem? Specialization नहीं. Manufacturing आसान है करनी. Manufacturing मुश्किल नहीं. Manufacturing का logistics मुश्किल है. The problem why it should not be done and why it is saying that it is now late, because the level of technology change is very high. कि semiconductor का इतना तेज technology shift है that you are reducing the size of the chip. So by the time India was established some manufacturing capacity in semiconductor, that semiconductors would not be useful. Because the size of the chip is reducing every year. वो technology development is very quick in semiconductors. There's a rule also which says कि हर साल change होता रहेगा. Your size of semiconductor will fall and this is your technology shift. India what should do is the bigger semiconductors जो 45 nanometers or 60 nanometers and above है. Right now the technology they are playing is roughly around, यहाँ पर खेल रही हैं companies, they are trying to this. Nvidia and all of those companies, Texas Instruments, सब लोग यहाँ पे they are trying to display this. India should focus here. These are the things which are used in what? ये वाली semiconductor chips कहाँ पे use हो रही हैं? Automobiles, where the level of processing required is less. This is something which we should focus on, but we are focusing on higher end technology. Problem है जब तक इंडिया 5 नैनोमीटर आएगा उससे कम की टेक्नोलॉजी बन जाएगी. Now whether we will have utilization of that or not, this is a very big question mark. So both manufacturing facilities is a very big question mark because the level of investment required is very high. 50,000 crore का एक your fab will set up because the level of infrastructure, logistics support required is very huge. And second also, which the government is spending, display fab. वो भी questionable है कि what is the need for establishing display fab in India when imports is very easy to get from those countries. तो कोई ऐसा technical benefit बहुत नहीं मिल रहा है display fab का because nobody is sharing the technology with you. So these setting up of fab is something questionable. Design linked incentives and assembly testing packaging. ये दोनों जगह पे we can focus more because these are the strength areas where India can utilize its skill. Already we have a lot of electronic engineers who are appearing for UPSC. उनको काम लगाओ, या वो कोडिंग सीख रहे हैं या वो ये कर रहे हैं. Coal industry, resurgence in economic activity. Why shortage of coal was a problem? Intense heat waves, rising international coal prices, and domestic production was short. Why domestic coal was short? One of the reasons, lack of storage. The problem was transportation. Railway rakes were not available. So transportation की वजह से the last few years we have seen shortage in coal. And to tackle this shortage in coal, there have been few measures taken. First, all generators were asked to meet 10% of their total demand for coal from imports. And if they were not doing this, there were penalties. So the first thing government said, out of maximum 4% import tha, now they are doing 10% import, they have to, otherwise there will be penalties. Second, Electricity Act mein all of the imported coal-based plants should run at full capacity. So these are certain features which can be again asked in prelims. The steps taken by the government, this. Tolling enabled states to transfer access to private generators, not wait for coal from other states. And REC and PFCs, these are two developmental financial institutions in the power sector. The government asked them to provide more and more finance. So 4 things to improve the domestic coal, to improve the electricity situation. Allow imported coal more, make them run at full capacity, transportation ease, and more finance from 2 developmental financial institutions, the Rural Electrification Corporation and the Power Finance Corporation. The government also has an idea to merge both. The government is talking about merging both of these. वो तो coal की वजह से नहीं है, but if you have imported coal, you have to run at full capacity. Less है 9 or 12% is what is something which is less. 9 to 12 days का ही coal left था last year. This was the problem. Who's the regulator who checks this? How much coal is left and what exactly is happening with respect to availability of raw material? Coal India. Regulator. Who's the regulator who is responsible to check whether they have adequate coal for production of electricity or not? Power plants के लिए. Power plants के लिए, to ensure there is optimum amount of coal, there is a regulator which also sees the technical standards for production of electricity. It is CEA. The Central Electricity Authority is what determines and tries to get this coal. This is the regulator in the power sector checking the raw material. Textile industry. नहीं, sufficient reserves हैं. Problem ये था कि production अगर estimate करने के बाद rakes नहीं थे. Transportation का ही बहुत बड़ी problem थी. इसलिए नहीं हुआ था. Before वो mismanagement of CIL, उन्होंने estimate नहीं किया था कि ये situation हो जाएगी. Right now also UP and 2 more states are facing problem because ये एकदम से, because one of the problems that has happened is intense heat waves very early. Intense heat waves very early means more electricity demand. More electricity demand, you have to prepare for it. तो वो कोल था नहीं, वो CIL ने estimate नहीं किया था. 2 साल से हो रहा. Textile, 4.45 crore people. This is what we talked about, employment elasticity. Exports of textiles increased, moderated, same thing. Ready-made garment का exports बढ़ा है in the last 1 year. Equity flow inflows falling in the textile sector. What is the problem with textile sector in India? Raw material. What is the problem of raw material? What is the problem? The biggest problem of textile sector is imports. This come at a from outside. We are not using our own. This imports is the import cost is significant in India. And also the other problem is the lack of. This is one of the most significant problem apart from the import cost. Now the government has two mechanisms to deal with this. One, the government has cluster-based approach. What is the idea of cluster-based approach? Providing all the facilities at one place, having the idea of shared infrastructure. The scheme is Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks, PM Mitra. So you can have this also. PM Mitra is dealing with what? The full form, it is dealing with textile parks. And the second is production linked incentives. So two schemes for the textile sector. One is your textile parks providing shared infrastructure, and other is production linked incentive. Both the schemes in the textile to solve their problems. Next is your pharma sector. Ranked third worldwide in production of pharma products by volume and 14 by value. Largest provider of having 20% share. These are the things, if you have by chance a question in mains, these are the things which can be used in the introduction. Third largest by volume and 14th by value, and second, the largest for generic medicines, 20% share. Pharmaceutical exports, high inflow, FDI, both the things very favorable for India in pharma sector. 3 PLI schemes, one is for pharmaceuticals, the other for, what is APIs or KSMs? Active, this is your key starting materials or active pharmaceutical ingredients. These are the raw materials which are required for pharmaceuticals. So 3 schemes, the raw material, medical devices and pharma itself. All of them production linked incentives. Are foreign players allowed in production linked incentives? Or is it only for domestic players? Allowed. Both FDI and domestic players are allowed for PLI in India. Another scheme recently launched by the government in 2022, that is strengthening the pharmaceutical industry. Introduced in 22, 500 crore for 5 years. Mostly dealing in existing infrastructure, upgrade production and promote the knowledge and awareness. 3 features: increasing the existing infrastructure, the production facilities. What they are trying to do here is upgradation. They are trying to help them meet the international regulatory standards. Existing infrastructure, production to meet the regulatory standards of outside, and knowledge and awareness. 3 major features of strengthening the pharmaceutical industry. To providing them regulatory standards, उसको help करना है higher regulatory standards meet करने के लिए, उसके लिए उनको पैसा चाहिए. This is where they are going to provide interest subvention, credit intervention के 3% 4% का interest subvention दिलवा देंगे, take loans and match the regulatory standards. Automobile sector, third largest automobile market in terms of sales, largest manufacturer of 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler vehicles, 4th largest of passenger cars. Again introduction, contribution to GDP. In the automobile sector also, the government has 2 types of schemes. One is for electronic vehicles. This is called your scheme. Faster adoption and manufacturing of electronic vehicles. For electronic vehicles production, the government has a scheme called FAME. FAME 1 and FAME 2, different features you can go through. In sectoral performance, they've just mentioned 2-3. PLI also in auto components and advanced chemistry cell. 14 total hai. Automobile has 2. Chemistry cell and auto components. What are the challenges in the sector? Demand, one is demand. What is the problem with why the 2-wheelers are not selling? 2-wheelers recorded a significant loss. Last 10 years में सबसे lowest demand रहा है 2-wheelers का. Manufacturing. So this is demand is not there. What else? Another problem that has happened is insurance premiums बढ़ गए हैं for two-wheelers. So one, there is no demand, and second problem is that the long-term third-party insurance premiums have increased significantly. This is why it witnessed the lowest sale in the last 10 years. Less demand and insurance. These are the two reasons why automobile did not see a demand increase. Last 10 years की least sale है last year में. This is what we are talking about because of these two reasons. Now integrating with the world, global value chain. What is global value chain? What is global value chain? Integrating world economies. No, this is not a global value chain. So what happens in a global value chain? हाँ, क्या होता है उसमें? ये सब फैक्टर्स हैं जो ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन बना रहे हैं, बट होता क्या है ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन? द वैल्यू एडिशन ऑफ components, not the product of components, is happening across geographies. Value addition of different components is happening across geographies. India is right now not a part of any of the major global value chains, where different components of a product are manufactured across different geographies. This is a global value chain. Product is being broken down and is manufactured in, say, 4 different countries. So value addition across geographies is a global value chain. Economic Survey says India is trying to integrate into these global value chains through 2 major policy schemes. One is Make in India 2.0, where the government is focusing on 24 sub-sectors which have been selected. We'll have a focused approach. Total sectors selected are 27, but 24 sub-sectors, especially in manufacturing. These are all manufacturing 24 sub-sectors where we are going to try to integrate here. Make in India, special focus on 24 sub-sectors. Earlier, Make in India 1.0 was 25 sectors, 0.0 is 27, 24 sub-sectors. What is the other idea of how the government is trying to integrate with global value chains? The idea is, now what is the most important benefit of PLI scheme? How is PLI scheme different from other schemes? You can have a question on this conceptual. What exactly are the benefits of PLI schemes? More you produce, that is the incentive. But PLI lie क्यों है? How is it different from other schemes? For example, Make in India से PLI अलग कैसे है? Sector specific. We had Make in India also 25 sectors. In fact, national manufacturing ने भी it identified 25 sectors. PLI is the idea in PLI, how it is different from other schemes, that it is not going to help all the players in the sector. Rest of the schemes are going to have equal benefits for all players. PLI is going to focus only on few large players. We want to become global champions. Idea of PLI is कि सबको नहीं, कुछ select लोगों को जिनकी already production capacity बहुत ज़्यादा है. This is how PLI is different from other schemes, that it is not going to give benefits to everyone. We are going to have certain players who are globally competitive, where they develop certain core competency and also develop technology. हमने कुछ प्लेयर सेलेक्ट करने हैं जो ग्लोबल लेवल पे compete करेंगे. This is what we are trying to do. Now, how are they going to, this is going to benefit India? Is this going to create jobs? Is this going to create jobs? If we select only few players, what the economic survey says, this is going to create jobs and going to bring growth, because these few large players who are global champions, they will act as anchor industry, and this anchor industry through its backward and forward linkage is going to create jobs. क्योंकि इनका demand होगा कि supply और चाहिए इनको. So they're going to act as anchor for rest of the other industries. They're going to benefit the MSME ecosystem because these anchor units are going to create new supplier base. We discussed how industry का पीछे का connecting point is the supplier base. So this is how they're going to help MSME. Now this is the question which they can ask in prelims. Will the PLI scheme help the MSMEs or not? Conceptually, it is targeting large players. बट इनका एंकर बना के MSME का हेल्प हो सकता है. So both things are going to happen. This is how conceptually PLI is different from other schemes because they are targeting few sectors because we have realized in those few sectors हमें कुछ ही players हैं जिनको competitive बना सकते हैं, सबको help नहीं दे सकते. Earlier scheme were targeting everyone, providing regulation ease or infrastructure support. This is picking out the few champions. This is how PLI is different from other schemes. So two things, Make in India and production linked incentive. You can say trickle down effect क्योंकि हमें कुछ ही प्लेयर्स को हमें लग रहा है उनकी प्रोडक्शन कैपेसिटी है. एंड हाउ इट इज नॉट हेल्पिंग PLI इन स्टार्टिंग न्यू. PLI इज नॉट हेल्पिंग यू टू एस्टैब्लिश अ न्यू इंडस्ट्री. PLI ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग प्लेयर्स को बोल रही है कि एक्स्ट्रा प्रोडक्शन करो. This is not helping you establish new units. It is it is picking out the already established players to start more production. So it is making big players. What? So new वो one of the few sectors they can give to new जहाँ पे वो cutting edge technology चाहिए. But majorly idea क्या है scheme का कि कुछ ही players को हम बड़ा बनाएंगे. They are going to compete on the world. Then fostering innovation. They have given one index here. That is the Global Innovation Index. This is released by, for research and development, there are two different government schemes. And the index for performance is Global Innovation Index. This index is released by World Intellectual Property Right Organization, which is a body under, this is a body of which organization? World Bank, OPEC, World Trade Organization, United Nations. See, sometimes you've read WTO, right? WTO जितना भी पढ़ा होगा, so you know you have read a lot of things on WTO. कहीं WPI का सुना? If it would have been important, you would have heard about this. Same thing helps a lot in UPSC. Because there are a lot of questions in history जहाँ पे पता होता है कि options are महात्मा गांधी, अम्बेडकर and all. तो वो तुक्का ऐसे ही लगता है, इनका होता कुछ तो पढ़ ही लिया होता. कितना कुछ किया है, ये एक्स्ट्रा चीजें भी लिखी हैं तो शायद. So same things when you have read about WTO, this is a body you have not heard of. Why would you pick out WTO? That's why you thought. Better guesswork would be this. See, this is how you have to utilize. ये तभी practice से थोड़ी चीजें आ जाती हैं. WIPO, which is of UN. If you don't know World Intellectual Property, then it's a problem. Global Innovation Index is this. In India, Innovation Index is published by Niti Aayog. Few things India has done for startups. One is Startup India, tax benefits, easier complications, fast tracking IPR, innovations, Atal Innovation Mission and National Initiative for Development in Harnessing Innovations, and Fund of Fund for Startups and Credit Guarantee Scheme. This Credit Guarantee Scheme would be run by the NCGC we just discussed. National Credit Guarantee Corporation वो सारी credit guarantee schemes चलाती है in India, which is part of Department of Financial Service under Ministry of Finance. The schemes for startups, what India is doing. Then one thing which the survey has discussed, the problem which we are seeing in startups right now. There are few more schemes which you can go through. The problems faced by startups, one is, the other is, मतलब पैसे भी नहीं है और पैसे कमा भी नहीं रहे हैं. And still we are the startup capital of the world. Problem with infrastructure and everything is a problem. This is why we are the startup capital. Now to evade this regulatory environment and track structures, they are doing a policy which is called as flipping. The idea of flipping is, right now, whatever the shares of the startup, they are held by people in India. Therefore, it is an Indian company. What they are doing is to get a better regulatory environment and to get a better tax structure. Tax structure के लिए what they are doing is they are opening up units in Singapore and Mauritius. Also, other countries such as UAE and Netherlands, they are also providing them a lot of regulatory benefits and tax benefits. This is why they are flipping. Flipping means whatever shares they have in the Indian company, they are flipping for shares in a foreign subsidiary, which is now the holding of the Indian company. वो establish अपने units बाहर कर रहे हैं. They are transferring all their shares to the foreign company. Shareholders अभी भी वही हैं, but through a foreign holding company. This company is mostly in Singapore, UAE, Mauritius. 4 examples it has given, and both because of the regulatory environment and better tax structures that are available there. This is why flipping, becoming a foreign company from an Indian company, flipping their shares in the Indian company to a foreign company, this is what is happening. Reverse flipping is we are trying to make them come back. These are the 2 phenomena the survey has discussed. The reasons for flipping, various reasons have been given. 1, most of the market of their product is outside countries, they're not selling it in India. 2nd, incubators who are helping them set up their business, वो बाहर के हैं. Product is outside, mentoring is outside. They need access to money from outside, or money outside के लिए they require certain domicile conditions. This is why they want to establish outside. And the next is protection and enforcement of intellectual property. India mein there's a lot of reverse engineering. To protect their product, they are registering outside. These are the 4 reasons why companies are flipping for foreign shores. इसी को control करने के लिए we have certain policy measures taken by the government. These are very broad policy measures. Simplifying tax, simplifying capital, simplifying taxation of stocks, grant of permissions, regular, so that we can have. What is important here, not the steps taken. You should know what is flipping and why they are doing flipping. These 2 things are important here, going for foreign shores. I think this is the last. And 2 things which they have for ease of doing business. 1 is the Department of Promotion of Investment and Industrial Trade. It's a business reform action plan. This business reform action plan, it ranks the states on the various reforms taken on ease of doing business. There are certain parameters जो इन्होंने खुद बनाए हैं, internal parameters of this business reform action plan. What is the state's performance on these parameters is what is checked in this report. Then there's a smart advanced manufacturing and rapid hub, Samarth. This is for industry 4.0. Advanced manufacturing, additive manufacturing. Udyog Bharat 4.0 under the Ministry of Heavy Industries. This is for newer technology. 1 ease of doing business, business reform action plan, and the other is smart advanced manufacturing rapid transformation hubs for industry 4.0. Is this clear? This is your industry chapter. Any doubts here? What you have to read and what you have to miss? Next we are going to discuss service. Service I'm just going to give you a brief overview. वहाँ पे it's mostly facts. See, इसका relevance is slightly lesser than the industry. Very less questions are being asked from this front. So I'll just give you a brief overview. Same thing they have done here. Service PMI, again. Market, it is a survey-based indicator. Expansion. Bank credit to service sector has expanded. FDI in services, few facts. 7th largest recipient. Highest ever inflows in 22. Year 22, not 23. Initiatives promoted. There are three things which I have given here. 1 is services. This is single window clearance. National single window clearance for FDI. 100% in telecommunication FDI. Insurance 74% and 20% in LIC. These facts are important. 100% FDI in telecommunications, 74% in insurance, 100% insurance was in the insurance aggregators, insurance brokers. उनके पास 100% है. Insurance sector is 74. 20% in LIC. Few facts about services sector. India is among the top 10 service exporting countries. 3% to 4% global trade in services. This we discussed yesterday also. Various sector performance they have discussed. One is tourism sector. World Tourism Barometer of United Nations World Tourism Organization. Indicator important. Performance of tourism is not that important. Measures have been taken and regional connectivity scheme UDAN. World Tourism Barometer of United Nations. Barometer एक measure करने का device. मतलब हाँ CSAT भी देना है. इंग्लिश ही बचाएगी वहाँ. Medical tourism. Hotel industry. Very weird facts, not important. Average room rate, revenue per available room, room occupancy. तो होटल की और कैसे पता चलेगी कि it is working well or not? This is why I did not make a PPT. I was making a PPT and facts पढ़े मैं क्या है ये? UPSC not very will not focus here. Service sector कम ही है. Real Estate Regulation Act, significant role in real estate sector. All of these sectors, if you go through, not very significant activity. Investments you should know. What are real investment? Real estate investment trusts. Real estate investment trust. To raise money, how? Domestic. See, the idea of real estate investment trust is that a lot of retail investors, they don't have a capacity to invest in, they don't have the money to invest in real estate or investment project or infrastructure projects. Now we have given them an instrument, real estate investment trust and infrastructure investment trust. These are mutual fund like organizations. You are going to pool money from retail investors and then going to invest money in real estate or infra projects. जो इनके यहाँ पे returns बनेंगे उसी के हिसाब से ये units will be sold to retail investors and they'll get the benefit. So just like mutual funds pool the money and invest in debt and equity. These are mutual fund like trust which are going to pool the money and invest in real estate and infrastructure, both new projects and old projects which have certain revenue streams. Rental income भी अगर आएगी तो वो भी इनका return है. Retail investors, since they don't have a lot of money to put in here, they are going to buy units of these trusts. These trusts can be managing any of infrastructure assets. This is the idea of real estate investment trust. We are trying to get money from retail investors in infrastructure and real estate. Then information technology and business process industry. This is the highest revenue generating and also job generating in India. IT and business process management industry. Employment generation recorded nearly 10% estimated growth in direct environment tools. Maximum jobs are created here. IT BPM industry. Major growths, India's digital talent, a lot of talent. Marginal defense, we can save cost and leading in hybrid models. This is why we have IT BPM growth. E-commerce sector, again significant. What they have said is e-commerce has diversified to grocery and general merchandise sector. What they are saying, a lot of e-commerce has spread to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. Small e-commerce players are coming. For example, they have given an example of one of the companies, Meesho. So covering the smaller units also directly getting it from smaller players is something which is helping the e-commerce sector. Also one of the most important development in e-commerce sector is your ONDC. Is this clear what is Open Network Digital Commerce? There are 3 features of ONDC. One, it allows interoperability. That means you can get all of the things at one point. Amazon का app खोलोगे, you can get Amazon, Zomato, you can get Uber, Ola, everything on the same app. All of the platforms exist at one app if they are networked to ONDC. ONDC gives the benefit that you have more visibility to smaller players. Because right now, visibility of smaller players is controlled by the platform. Amazon control karte hai, uski algorithm controls which sellers will be placed on top and below. This is why small players do not get the visibility. Now when the company is interlinked to ONDC, all of the platforms will get equal visibility. Amazon, Flipkart, any other small website, so all players are going to get equal visibility. Further, you are going to have choice for the consumer. Price and choice, more product choice and also price choice, because right now what the consumer tendency is कि पहले Amazon पे price check करना है फिर Flipkart पे. So now everything will happen at the same platform. And this is going to incentivize more competition because visibility छोटे players की भी है. Just like there are a lot of apps which do this right now also. Trivago करता है hotels में. So all the websites. So वो Trivago का better experience है because it is doing across things. And interoperability is also going to help. For example, most of the times if you are ordering something through Zomato, there could be a problem कि order deliver हो रहा है but driver नहीं है. So this is going to help because you can get a driver through the interoperability app to get the food from Zomato. So interoperability, Amazon, it is taking 7 days to deliver your product. Do you have any other option to get the same product from Amazon but in 2 days? Is there an option where a 7-day product you can get in 2 days from Amazon? How? Prime to. You see Prime, कितने products पे Prime है? प्राइम अगर इतना ही सही होता इंडिया में, लॉजिस्टिक्स की इतनी प्रॉब्लम है, अमेजॉन इज फेसिंग द सेम थिंग. अगर प्राइम होता तो प्राइम वीडियो फ्री नहीं होती कभी. मिर्जापुर दिखाई से ले रहे हैं कि प्रोडक्ट 7 दिन में ले लो, 2-3 दिन टाइम पास करो. See, you can't, whatever the day, even if under Prime, if you require in 1 day, you don't have the option. So now when the interoperable operations, you can get a logistics platform to get delivered the Amazon product in lesser time. ये option बढ़ाएगा because interoperability होगी. Right now Silo network है. See, ONDC is very important. Question would not be what is ONDC, question would be implication of ONDC. Same thing they did in 2016, they did not ask what is UPI, they asked अगर अब UPI market में आ गया तो क्या होगा? And the answer there was कि wallets कम हो जाएंगे. Because the whole idea of UPI is bank to bank transfer. So you would not require wallet. Similarly, you will have a question, you understand conceptually ONDC है क्या? Because they'll ask what is the implication of ONDC. The monopoly powers of the platform is going to end. And you are going to have more visibility here. This is the biggest benefit of open network digital commerce. All of the players, it is not just linking only e-commerce players, everything. Anything that is available digitally commerce will be interlinked through ONDC. You just have to search the product and you will get number of options across different platforms. This is the idea of ONDC. ONDC is being developed by whom? These are the things which you have to know, and this is what the question is going to be. Then there's another recent, that is your government e-marketplace. What is government e-marketplace? What is the idea of government e-marketplace? Online platform for what? Buying and selling. Who is selling and who is buying? MSMEs. And there is one thing which is a problem in your free trade agreements also, that is government has to buy a lot of goods. Government is the buyer, sellers are any MSMEs or industry. This is your government e-marketplace where you have any number of players because government needs to buy a lot of goods for providing any infrastructure or any service. तो वो उसके लिए जो government की जो भी buying होगी वो government e-marketplace पे होगी. This is more transparent and gives the government all options, and also most of the times problem यहाँ पे ये था कि जो government procurement था उनके contracts में only few players were given the benefits. तो वो end होगा because now everyone is getting visibility on the government e-market platform. This is GEM. Then digital financial services increasing in India, Jandhan, Mobile, Unity, Jam, Trinity, UPI, Neobank, CBDC. What is Neobank? Completely online, but they exist in partnership with traditional banks for all regulatory purpose. What is CBDC? Central Bank Digital Currency. And have we launched CBDC? Even this is a very important concept. Iske features and iska working would be helpful. Is it launched? ओनली ऑन पायलट बेसिस, नॉट राइट नाउ. ऑन पायलट बेसिस क्या लॉन्च किया है? Wholesaler. CBDC exists, will come in two form right now. One is wholesale and the other is, what is the difference? What is the difference between CBDC wholesale and CBDC retail? Distribution will be wholesale, retail, no. Denomination. नहीं, डिनोमिनेशन ही डिफरेंस है दोनों में. फिर तो हम टोकन निकाल दें सीबीडीसी के अलग अलग. डिनोमिनेशन के ही अगर टोकन्स निकालने हैं तो एक 100 का टोकन होगा, एक 500 का. व्हाट इज होलसेल एंड रिटेल सीबीडीसी? Wholesale CBDC will only be used by banks and financial institutions for certain functions such as buying government securities and other functions amongst themselves and with the government or RBI. ये लोगों के लिए नहीं है. This is not for regular people for any transactions. It is only for banks and financial institutions where they are going to use this currency, for example, buying government securities. Retail is for all citizens or all consumers. Right now what we have started on a pilot basis is wholesale CBDC, and whether CBDC is account based or token based, ये भी एक keynote में they have discussed. Account and token. What we have started is token based. What is account based? What is the difference between the two? First you think understand CBDC एक digital currency है. It will not have physical form. It is a legal tender in digital format. What is the difference between account and token? Interest नहीं, वो अलग concept है कि whether it will be an interest bearing or no interest. Have we started interest bearing or no interest? No interest. Why? करेंसी पे इंटरेस्ट नहीं है. और क्या प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है अगर इंटरेस्ट बेस्ड सीबीडीसी हो तो? The biggest problem is if you start giving interest based CBDC, who is going to deposit in banks? Banks के साथ एक competition बन जाएगा. This is why we are giving no interest CBDC, not a interest bearing instrument. Now what is the difference between account and token? Each token is traceable. Is it traceable? In fact we are trying to, वो भी anonymity भी थोड़ा try कर रहे हैं लाने की, which is difficult but still. Blockchain तो any technology new is, if it is written blockchain, take it. Gambling हो रही है blockchain, money laundering blockchain, सब करता blockchain. Account or token, see the difference between account and token is that when you have account based CBDC, all of your money is linked to your account. So if a person has money in the account, that CBDC in his own account, अगर अब वो transfer करना है तो हमें एक ही authorization चाहिए है. Account based currency means it is linked to the person. You will need authentication of the person to use the currency. A token based currency is just like your non fungible instrument where you can use it anywhere. Convertible है, हमें जरूरी नहीं है वो पता हो एक के पास है. Right now, the way we use coins and notes, whoever is holding the coin or note is, we assume he is the owner. Same thing is a token based. Whoever is holding, we assume the owner. Account based में वो नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि वो उस personal account में ही पैसा है. So here you will need authorization of this person to use the currency. Coin is just like, token is just like coins or notes. Whoever is holding the currency, he is the owner. We don't need authorization के वो आया कहाँ से. In India we have started token based CBDC, not account based. This would be slightly difficult to implement. No, crypto is token only. बिटकॉइन कहीं से कहीं जाए कोई जरूरी थोड़ी है. वो जो भी जिसके पास बिटकॉइन है वो ओनर है. सिर्फ अकाउंट में लिंक थोड़ी है, वो तो अकाउंट लिंक्ड होता, टोकन अलग से नहीं होता. अब नाउ ए हैज टू गो फ्रॉम बी ओनली, तो वो बी के अकाउंट में रिफ्लेक्ट होगा. फिर अब बी को कहीं खर्च करना है तो बी का ऑथराइजेशन चाहिए. बट हियर जस्ट लाइक कॉइन्स और नोट्स, हुएवर इज होल्डिंग, वी अज्यूम ही इज द ओनर. राइट नाउ इफ यू आर होल्डिंग सर्टेन बिटकॉइंस, यू आर द ओनर. अकाउंट में है किसके है क्या, ऑथराइजेशन नहीं है. टोकन है जैसे जस्ट लाइक कॉइन्स और नोट्स. रेगुलेट जैसे कॉइन्स और नोट्स रेगुलेट होता है कि हाउ मच मनी सप्लाई इज क्रिएटेड, द सेम थिंग इट इज क्रिएटेड. फॉर्म ऑफ सीबीडीसी डिस्कस कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे कि किस फॉर्म में इशू होगा, या टोकन होगा या अकाउंट होगा. सो व्हाट वी हैव डन इज, इट इज टोकन राइट नाउ ओनली फॉर होलसेल पर्पस, एंड इट इज अ नॉन इंटरेस्ट बियरिंग इंस्ट्रूमेंट. इट इज अ नॉर्मल करेंसी लाइक द अदर करेंसी बट ओनली इन digital format. And why has the government launched CBDC? Because people are getting enamored by cryptocurrencies. We want to reduce their focus there and give them a digital option which is controlled by the central bank. One thing to be clear here, this is not a decentralized currency. This is not decentralized. ये centrally controlled है RBI से. RBI decide करेगा कितनी release करनी है. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, the feature was they were decentralized. There was no one central controlling authority. This is a centralized authority. RBI is going to release your central bank digital currency. Can you have a central bank digital currency with assuring complete anonymity? Why do people use cash? Because anonymity hai, we don't know where it is. Same thing will not be possible here. This is why the government has said we are going to have the principle of, they have just said this in this concept note RBI के, managed anonymity होगी. मुश्किल इसलिए है because digital transactions will always leave a trace. So CBDC completely autonomous और anonymous नहीं हो सकता. This is what the government is saying. We are trying to reduce it. Managed anonymity होगी. Anonymity possible नहीं हो पाएगी ना total. The whole idea is that people use cash. Why do people use cash? क्योंकि digital trace नहीं है, tax बचाना है. So this is something which will be difficult here. This is why the government has used the term managed anonymity. Okay, we'll try to provide certain things. Yes, the government also wants to reduce physical cash because physical cash का operational cost बहुत है. उसका printing plus transportation. If you want to send physical cash to different parts of the country, it has involved cost. CBDC में वो cost खत्म हो जाएगी. You won't have operational cost of managing the currency. Online transactions is something you are depositing the money, your claim on the bank money is being used in online transactions. How exactly do you use mobile banking or internet banking? What are you using here? Or if you are using prepaid payment instruments, इन तीनों में आप क्या use कर रहे हो? This is a claim or claim on the money you have deposited here. CBDC is money itself. तो आपने बैंक में पैसे डाले हैं तभी आप वो ये इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स यूज कर रहे हो. वो बैंक में पैसे कैसे डाले हैं? You have deposited cash or money has been deposited by someone in your bank account. अब वो money जो deposit हो रहा है, that is not just coming in the form of cash. अब वो digital भी आएगा. It is money itself. It is not a claim on money. It is money itself. CBDC जैसे अकाउंट में आपके पैसे होते हैं, वही ऐसे ये टोकन शो हो सकते हैं कि 10 टोकन आपके पास 100 रुपए के हैं CBDC में. राइट नाउ यू हैव 1000 रुपीज, वो आपको कैश में किसी में भी दे सकते हैं, नोट्स कॉइन्स. तो वैसे हाँ वैल्यू तो वो टोकन डिसाइड कर सकते हैं ना कितने का टोकन है. राइट नाउ इफ द गवर्नमेंट वांट्स टू इशू मोर कॉइन्स तो वो इट कैन इशू अ कॉइन ऑफ 10 रुपीज. वैसे ही अब 10 रुपीज का एक टोकन ऑनलाइन दे दिया. उसका डिनोमिनेशन तो आरबीआई डिसाइड कर सकता है, कोई भी डिनोमिनेशन में दे सकते हैं. फॉर्म्स दो हैं, वन इज होलसेल विच विल ओनली बी यूज्ड बाय बैंक्स एंड फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस, अदर रिटेल विच विल बी यूज्ड बाय एवरीवन. तो आपको ये यूज करने को मिलेगा इफ इट इज रिटन 10 रिटेल. तो बैंक, हाँ फॉर्म अलग है सिर्फ. दिस इज करेंसी ओनली, द फॉर्म इज डिफरेंट, रेस्ट एवरीथिंग इज सेम. फॉर्म ऑफ मनी इज डिफरेंट, इट इज डिजिटल. There are two formats here. What the government is saying, one is either we can have direct accounts with RBI or the RBI will not form your accounts. RBI banks को बोलेगा अकाउंट खोलने के लिए. This is why we are seeing CBDC से financial inclusion भी होगा क्योंकि आपको बैंक अकाउंट्स में ये डिजिटल करेंसी मिलेगा. So either banks will open or RBI will open, or they have suggested a hybrid model also where RBI will also open and banks will also open. Both will open. डायरेक्ट मॉडल में आरबीआई, इनडायरेक्ट में बैंक्स, हाइब्रिड में दोनों. दिस इज हाउ ओपनिंग ऑफ द अकाउंट्स. राइट नाउ जो इशू हुआ है वो बैंक्स के थ्रू हुआ है. राइट नाउ वी आर नॉट इशूइंग इट विद आरबीआई, बैंक्स के थ्रू हुआ है. सबका अकाउंट आरबीआई में खुलेगा या बैंक्स में होगा. दिस इज हाउ यू विल बी यूजिंग. सो आरबीआई विल गिव द यूनिट्स. अभी भी तो करेंसी आरबीआई बैंक्स के थ्रू आगे फैलाता है. सिमिलरली सीबीडीसी इट विल डू. राइट नाउ इट इज बैंक लेड मॉडल, नॉट हाइब्रिड. RBI is not opening accounts. अभी पायलट स्टडी ही है, अभी फुल फ्लेज लॉन्च नहीं किया है CBDC. Both ONDC and CBDC have been launched on pilot basis, not a complete. Few 5-6 cities में ONDC launch हुआ है अभी. Same CBDC भी only for banks, wholesale model. And directly through banks open account होगा, RBI में account open नहीं होगा. Form. It's a currency only form is different, nothing else. नॉर्मल है कि दो चीजें थी, फिजिकल इधर उधर घुमाने में पैसा ज्यादा खर्च होता है, सेकंड दूसरा था पीपल वर इन्वेस्टिंग अ लॉट इन क्रिप्टो करेंसीज, वी वांट देम टू गिव अ डिजिटल करेंसी फ्रॉम द बैंक इटसेल्फ, दिस इज व्हाई दे हैव इंट्रोड्यूस्ड दिस। हाँ कम हो जाएगी बिकॉज इट इज डीलिंग इन डिजिटल। डिनोमिनेशन तो कुछ भी हो सकता है ना, कितने का भी नोट निकालता है, 500 का निकाले 2000 का, एक करेंसी डिजिटल निकाल देगा कितनी भी वैल्यू की, वो तो आरबीआई डिसाइड कर सकता है। नेक्स्ट इज वन इज अकाउंट एग्रीगेटर फ्रेमवर्क गिवन बाय द आरबीआई। अकाउंट एग्रीगेटर इज लाइक एन एनबीएफसी, the name itself suggests account aggregator. You have opened accounts of various things in banks, you could have an account in NBFC, you can have a insurance service, you can have a pension account, इन सब की इंफॉर्मेशन एक ही जगह दिखेगी। दिस इज द फंक्शन ऑफ अकाउंट एग्रीगेटर, इट फंक्शंस एज एन एनबीएफसी, लाइसेंस एनबीएफसी का है और आरबीआई रेगुलेट करेगा, वेयर इट इज गोइंग टू प्रोवाइड यू ऑल इंफॉर्मेशन एट वन प्लेस। यू हैव अ पेंशन अकाउंट, यू हैव अ इन्वेस्टमेंट अकाउंट, डीमैट अकाउंट, सारे अकाउंट की इंफॉर्मेशन यू आर गोइंग टू गेट ओनली एट दिस framework. This is the idea of account aggregator. This is an NBFC which is regulated by RBI. हाँ तो वो NBFC की तरह रजिस्टर्ड है, वो बाकी बैंक्स की इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं दे सकते, वो जो प्रोवाइड कर रहा है वो सर्विस वो NBFC के लाइसेंस पे प्रोवाइड कर रहा है, दे विल बी रजिस्टर्ड एज NBFCs. Digitalization, certain reforms, center of excellence for certain artificial, ये बजट में है, गिफ्ट इंटरनेशनल फाइनेंशियल सेंटर, KYC procedure, risk based, not single fish approach. This is your services chapter. I hope industry and services is clear. This is it for the economic survey. Thank you.